Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, because we are connected with all around the world. So we are glad to start the final session of this 11th Biennale around climate change again. We'll have two blocks. First block will be related with the jury members of both Rosa Barba Award and the School Award. They will share with us their thoughts. And we will have also a lecture related with the climate change issue by the Barcelona chief architect that will be presented later. Then we'll have a break, and then we will go to the award ceremony for both Rosa Barba and Schools Awards. So we'll start. We are sorry for the little delay. This is an event that is also in person conditions, so we'll have some technical problems as usual. But we hope we will recover the lost time during the session. So I want to introduce Professor Lisa Mackenzie, member of the jury of the Schools Award.
Del premio de las
Lisa,
escuelas.
when you're ready, you have the floor.
Lisa, cuando estéis lista, tienes la palabra.
Hello, everyone. Marina Cervera asked me to say something today about who I am and where I am from and what I do, so that you, the Biennale audience, can understand a little bit more about the jury that make the decision about the Rosa Barba Prize.
Del premio Rosa Barba.
I am honoured to be asked to do this and to be in such esteemed company. One of the reasons I was invited is because our students at the University of Edinburgh won the School Prize in 2018. I am also the director of EMILA for the University of Edinburgh, so I guess you could say I already bear witness to a range of institutional contexts in landscape architecture. And over the last couple of years, I've been working with Alex Wall of the GSD as an external examiner in Oslo at the AHO. And I am sure I have never met a sharper and more astute observer of seeking the basis of design in students' work. So thank you, Alex, for the learning journey. At the University of Edinburgh, landscape architecture joins architecture as a discipline within the Edinburgh School of Architecture and Landscape Architecture. We are situated within an art school, but also within the wider university context that operates at a different scale with different correlations nationally and internationally. From the world of the art school around us, our students are influenced by the transition from image to environment and installation, and there is always something new to look at and to be inspired by. And from the university context, we detect a growing interest in landscape architecture from the social and physical scientists that are around us, particularly in the role that landscape architecture has as a mediated genre in tackling climate change. We increasingly understand that the methods that we use as landscape architects in both fieldwork, where we make plural readings of science, and practice, where we can put research into action, have the potential to offer other disciplines avenues to impact and to make change on the ground and in the ground. Landscape architects also have an ability to represent large scales differently, mapping, going beyond mapping to capture what is there, but also what is there and not always seen. The art school context opens channels to work with other creative disciplines. Here my own work in Scotland with the visual artist Victoria Clare Burney, representing my ongoing obsession with the multivariant thickness of landscape and what that means. And from the university context, that obsession with thickness continues in the Guatemalan Cordillera, where I'm working on volcanic landscapes with geoscientists, human geographers, philosophers, and development theorists. In Edinburgh, as a teaching team, we are preoccupied with finding the right scale for our work and for our teaching activity, and supporting our students in understanding that it is perhaps antagonistic to assume that you know what that scale is too quickly. If you go too big, you obfuscate the reality of landscape interrelationships on the ground. And if you go too small and too intimate, it is difficult to scale back up your ideas to hold meaning for policy making and change across the bioregion and across the territory. So we often
Por lo
begin by taking
tanto, a
detailed
menudo
inventories of the
empezamos
sites where
cogiendo
we are
inventarios
working,
detallados de los
reading,
lugares en los que
drawing,
trabajamos,
model
dibujando,
making
haciendo
interpretations of the
esbozos,
site and
haciendo
abstract,
interpretaciones
working
de
with
lo
models,
seguro
and
y
where
abstracto,
necessary
trabajando con
with
modelos
scientific
y
precision.
llevando también una precisión igual
After
científica.
we won the Rosa Barbara
A
Prize as a
medida
school
que
in
vamos avanzando y
2018,
cuando
we
ganamos
were
el premio
then
en el año
thinking about how to
2018,
find new
estuvimos
pedagogic
pensando en
strategies
nuevas
and
estrategias
challenges.
pedagógicas y
I was delighted to be
desafíos.
invited by Anne and Tim
Nos
Kassler to
encanta
work on the
que Tim Kassler
educational
nos haya
elements of the
invitado a
Oslo
trabajar en los
Architecture
elementos
Triennale in
educativos
2019.
en el
Led by
2018
Tristan Bonifer
y
of
me ha
Rotor,
interesado
we worked on
también
the empty
el
buildings of
poder
Oslo,
trabajar en los
including
distintos
Ilo Saarinen
edificios
and the
de
beautiful
Oslo
American
para
embassy,
poder
but
hablar
also with
de
other
los edificios
buildings
de la
across the
Embajada
city
Americana y
that were
otros
less
edificios de la
recognizable
ciudad,
or
que
obsolescence
también a
loomed.
veces pueden ser un
Bringing
poco
landscape
obsoletos.
architecture
Llevar el
students in
paisajismo
contact
y a
with
los
other students
alumnos a
of art and
contacto
of design
con otros
and of
estudiantes de arte y
architecture
diseño
gave
y
us new
arquitectura
insights,
nos
and made
da
us
una
think
nueva
differently
perspectiva
again
y
about what
una
we
vez
do
más
and who we
realza lo que
work with.
hacemos y con quién trabajamos.
The work of Yang
La
Pan
obra de
in
Yang
Oslo,
Kyung-pan
making
en
hybrid
Oslo,
representations
haciendo
between model making
representaciones
and drawing.
entre modelos y
The
dibujos.
beautiful work and
La
craft of
obra
Jennifer
preciosa
Fauster in
de Jennifer
Manhattan, who has gone
Auster
on to take
en
up an academic
Manhattan,
position at the
que ha adoptado una
University of
posición
Graz.
académica en la Universidad de Graz.
And specifically,
Y
to
más
go back to talk
concretamente,
about what we are
si
doing in
volvemos a hablar
Edinburgh
de lo que estamos
and
haciendo en
in relation to
Edimburgo
climate
y la
change,
relación
the
con el
School
cambio
of
climático, la
Architecture and
Escuela de
Landscape
Arquitectura
Architecture
y
have
de
initiated
Paisajismo ha
a group called the
iniciado
Sala de Clares,
llamado
which is our
la
collective
de Clares, que
response
es una
and a
respuesta
repository
colectiva
for our work that relates to
al
climate
repositorio del
change,
trabajo
where we
relacionado con
hold a
cambio
range of
climático.
fora about our changing
Hablamos
world.
de los
And recently in Asala, we have reviewed the entire curriculum to understand how we communicate a pedagogic response to the climate emergency so that really we can do better and find gaps and be even more ambitious about our activities. At the end of 2019, we held an event to discuss the significance of planting more trees and what that actually means for the wider environment in a holistic sense, asking the important question, is it always a good thing to plant more trees?
Es bueno plantar
And
más
finally, to say something
árboles.
about the
Por
Schools
último,
Prize,
para hablar del premio de
it
las
is of course a
escuelas,
privilege to get
evidentemente
an
es un
insight into the
privilegio
work that
poder ver
happens and is
el trabajo que se está
painstakingly thought
realizando
about and
y
ultimately
que
produced in other
se
schools.
trabaja
I
a
wish
partir
that
de
we could see
distintas
the back of
competencias.
house
Espero que
and recognize
podamos
the hours
ver
and hours
y
of hard work
reconocer
shared by
el
students and
esfuerzo
staff in these
invertido por
institutions.
alumnos, personal y sus
It is evident
escuelas.
that many of you put
Y
considerable
seguramente
time and
muchos
effort into
han
your
dedicado
submission
tiempo y
that
esfuerzo a
embraces
esta
the
misión
unique
y
ethos
los
and
recursos que se
identity
han
of the
invertido
schools
también
and of the commitment of both staff and
en las
students are revealed to us.
de los
I would single out Denise Hoffman-Brandt for her
Gracias a
description of the way in which you support your students,
el informe
and I
ambicioso.
particularly enjoyed that they had the floor
Disfruto
and had
también
the first
de
response to the
que
call in
hayan
your
podido
video,
dar una
where we see
primera
them talk
respuesta a
about
estos
their own
proyectos. Les
work
hemos visto
with
hablando
such
de sus
passion
propios
and
trabajos
commitment.
con mucha pasión y
All the
compromiso.
schools have achieved something remarkable in very difficult and challenging times, and I find much of the work
Y creo
insightful
que
and
el
compelling for a
trabajo
range of diverse reasons. It's very difficult to say what we, the jury, have been looking for. And if I reflect back on this process, I guess I can only talk from my own personal perspective, that we've been looking for
nosotros
question finding in the projects. The
te
work doesn't need
el
to be
trabajo
nebulous, but we don't
no
want it to be
significa
nebulous, but it
que
needs to be reaching,
conecte, no
not
ha de
too
haber una
abstract, but unafraid
nebulosa,
to
pero
deal with the
tiene que
fuzzy
llegar.
nature of project conception. We've been looking for projects that respect different ontologies and different forms of knowledge. We've been looking for projects where we see work that is bold and courageous in facing the climate emergency.
Atrevido para hacer frente al cambio climático, que los estudiantes sean originales, especulativos y experimentales. Y por último,
we've been looking for students and we've been looking for projects that hold a range of issues and tension. And perhaps if you're remarkable enough to do all of those things, then maybe also NASA will decide to put you into space. Thank you very much to all the people that have made entries to the School Prize, and thank you very much for your time.
Y gracias
today.
también por vuestro tiempo.
So, thank you very much, Lisa. We are honored with your work and with the strong commitment you have had with the jury. Thank you very much for showing how you deal with the jury and how the programs and the school of your that you
los programas y las escuelas. Si el orador es tan amable de acercarse al micrófono, se lo agradeceremos mucho.
I want to introduce you Professor Timothy Bird.
Al profesor Timothy Bird.
Timothy, when you're ready,
cuando estés listo, y si el presentador se acerca al micrófono, se lo agradeceremos mucho. Muchas gracias.
Hi, I'm Tim Baird, Professor and Chair of Landscape Architecture at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. Ithaca is located on the Cayuga Lake in the Finger Lakes region of the lower central part of New York State and about 4 hours by car from New York City. So we're definitely not in New York City as many assume. I'm a licensed landscape architect and have practiced for over 4 decades in the U.S. and internationally. In addition to visiting faculty appointments, I've had full-time appointments for over 20 years. I've taught at 7 universities during that period, and I've continued to practice part-time as well. I'd like to take a couple of minutes to introduce our program at Cornell.
A presentar nuestro programa en
landscape design was taught as early as the 1890s. The program was formalized in 1904, and you can see there the timeline of the different degrees that were begun, and a notable contribution to the profession of landscape architecture. I think 13 of the first 19 Rome Prize winners came from Cornell University. From the fellowships are awarded from the American Academy in Rome. So we have 2 degrees, an undergraduate BSLA degree with about 40 to 45 students total at any one time. We also have a master's MLA degree. We have a 3-year post-professional degree and a 3-year first professional degree, a 2-year post-professional degree, and a 1-year Master of Professional Studies, which is a research-based 1-year study. And we also have a dual degree with city and regional planning. Our bachelor's degree is the only first professional undergraduate degree offered by the Ivy League schools in the U.S. We expose our students to multiple scales, from looking at the entire length of an interstate highway that traverses the U.S. from coast to coast. We also look at smaller scale and more local and regional sites, including here in downtown Ithaca, New York. We have a presence in New York City now where we teach an urban landscape studio. Students spend the summer 8 weeks in an intensive studio setting and are able to live and study in the city. We have international studios from time to time. This is one taught by Professor Maria Gula in Barcelona. We're working to expand our international studio opportunities for students in places like India and South America. During the pandemic, we pivoted to online instruction like everybody else, and some of our faculty created some new and innovative pedagogic models, such as using virtual reality for students who were in many parts of the world, so that they could find their own site, create an immersive environment, and then share that with their classmates. We also
también hemos podido enseñar en
is good. We have a small department and
un pequeño
that
departamento,
offers a more familial atmosphere for the
un
department.
ambiente más familiar.
Have a much better faculty to student ratio than many schools. We also like to socialize. This is an image of our Thanksgiving feast. We call it Harvest Feast, a holiday in the U.S. The department cooks up 4 or 5 large turkeys, and everyone brings a dish of food, and we sit down for a couple of hours before the holiday and enjoy food and each other's company. So I'd like to say it's been an honor to serve on the school prize jury.
Formar parte
Esteemed colleagues, and I'm very impressed with the quality of the work.
por la calidad
I consider significant in student work in general, and in particular for the school prize, are the strength of the idea in addressing the charge of the studio brief, and in this case, the theme of the Biennale, that of climate change. The timeliness of the idea, does it attempt to resolve contemporary ecological issues like sea level rise, flooding, storm surge, and water quality, as well as cultural issues such as diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as environmental and social justice. And thirdly, the level of design resolution. Not necessarily constructability, but does this theme provide confidence that the project has at least a chance of becoming reality eventually? I think all the finalists address these things in some way, and it's difficult to single out individual projects since they're all finalists and therefore have reached a certain standard of quality according to the jury. The three projects that were of particular interest to me are the first one here called Breathe by Rapa Surayaras, I believe. I hope that's the correct pronunciation. From TU Delft. This project addresses a very serious global problem of a lack of affordable and available housing that results in the creation of informal
que resulta en asentamientos informales a lo largo del tiempo en territorio.
This proposal creates a system that collects waste generated in the settlement to convert it into a resource as part of a plan for a more sustainable and livable community in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. The inclusion of a market, community gardens and kitchen, and a water storage area will provide much needed amenities for the residents and an ecologically performative landscape. The second one is Waterkeeper by Hun Cong Dinh, Politecnico de Milano. This project proposes a sustainable water collection and storage system in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam, and it holds water from floods for use during drier times, and it also flushes salt water that intrudes into the freshwater system. An in-depth examination of the hydrologic system in the region and the deleterious impacts of agriculture and climate change led to a proposal that uses the extensive existing canal network to create forested corridors. The combination of these linear water conveyances with bands of trees that can withstand periodic inundation reduces heat and evaporation, thus creating comfortable microclimates for human use in an interconnected system of green canals. The drawings are very clear in expressing the concept, especially the sections. There's an excellent level of detail in the research and in the design resolution. And finally, A Resonance in Death by Anna Spidell of City College of New York. This project addresses a very sensitive issue in the U.S. that questions a cultural phenomenon of the in-ground burial ritual and how it could be more environmentally and spatially sustainable. The high level of detail in research and understanding of the U.S. funeral industry is impressive and will be a good point of departure for discussion on how to transition the industry into a better future for the planet. Having worked in the funeral industry myself, I see this project as one of great potential to change the minds and long-held customs of the U.S. population. Again, it's an honor to have served on the School Prize jury. Thank you very much, and congratulations to all the School Prize finalists. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, team. Thank you for sharing with us the history programs and works of your school. And also, we want to thank you very much for your commitment with the jury of the International Landscape School Prize. Thank you very much. Now we have a video, 5-minute video. We will see who have been our sponsors in this Biennale.
look around. Nature shows us how to live in harmony, balancing individual fulfillment and respect for what surrounds us. In Ashkofet, we like to act like nature does. That's why everything in our new bench points at nature. Its name is Alpine. It's comprised of sustainable materials. The supports are made of eco-formulated concrete, which comes from recycled aggregates of local waste. For the seat and back, we use certified wood from responsibly managed forests. Alpine can be dismantled and piled up for sustainable distribution. This innovative system enables an in-situ assembly, as well as the separation of its components for recycling. Alpine is a solid and comfortable bench, conceived to be respectful with nature. So come, have a seat, and look around.
Hello and welcome to Hunter Industries. We're happy you can join us for a virtual tour. Since our founding in 1981, we've dedicated ourselves to pushing the boundaries of innovation, technology, and customer service wherever we do business. We're proud to provide premier solutions for residential, commercial, golf, agricultural irrigation applications, as well as the landscape lighting, architectural lighting, and custom manufacturing sectors. Today, you'll get a special behind-the-scenes look at our 20-acre global headquarters in San Marcos, California, as well as our state-of-the-art manufacturing facilities in nearby Tijuana, Mexico. You'll see where we conceptualize, engineer, deliver, and support a full spectrum of products for diverse customer segments and end users worldwide. We're proud that our products help bring landscapes and outdoor living spaces to life. When our products reach their final destinations at homes, businesses, schools, parks, roadsides, golf courses, stadiums, hotels, farmland, and government buildings around the globe, you can be sure that everyone here at Hunter Industries did our best during each step of the process to ensure maximum reliability and performance. We hope you enjoyed this presentation, and we appreciate your support. If you'd like to know more about us or our products, visit hunterindustries.com or contact your local sales representative. Thanks for watching.
Desde 1933, Rainbird ha sido el principal proveedor de productos y servicios de riego para aplicaciones agrícolas,
for food applications, residential installments and commercial ones, golf courses and sports stadiums all over the world. We have obtained more than 500 patents for product development which save water, such as irrigation systems, valves, dropping tubes, pumping systems, programmers, and software for irrigation management. We manufacture high-quality products in Arizona, Alabama, Mexico, and France, and we distribute in more than 100 countries. The passion by Rainbird to preserve water and our commitment with intelligent use of water are the basis of the main ideas of the members of our team. An attractive garden, well-maintained, has many benefits, and it attracts tourism for the enjoyment of public parks, shopping malls, restaurants, business, increases the value of property, and promotes investment in the area. It also contributes to reduce pollution, such as carbon emissions, and avoids the erosion of earth. Manual irrigation systems through other methods consumes a lot of water and wastes water, but automatic irrigation systems save time, water, energy, and money. And they avoid an excess of irrigation and insufficient irrigation, optimize the plant's health, and protect their immersion. Automatic irrigation systems reduce garden maintenance and problems such as accidents and faults. The programmers are the heart of the system, with central controls, wireless devices, battery devices. Rainbird allows you to be in control of your garden. These sensors, which are based on climate, can be adjusted depending on the rain and other climatological conditions, and the correct amount of water is going to be applied. The different functionalities of detection and prevention of leaks avoid small problems becoming great catastrophes, and we avoid different problems and the displacement of water due to the wind. We create higher drops and bigger drops, and we offer a more uniform coverage. The low-tilt products and application of water directly to the roots allow us to irrigate in a localized way. Finally, patented technology, rain curtain, ensures a higher distribution of water for a greener grass. In order to be successful, the installment needs efficient and durable products. This is why Rainbird has more than 80 years of experience in irrigation, offering the widest range of products and the biggest quality of the market. We can also help with the design of the project, and we provide you all the components. Please save water, maximize its efficiency, and save money. This is intelligent. Please get in touch with the representative or closest Rainbird representative in order to obtain more information. Good afternoon. Good evening, good morning. So without further ado, in order to keep up with our schedule and obliged by the new modality of the biennial, we will give the floor to Xavier Matilla, who is Chief Architect of the Barcelona City Council. And we are pleased that this conference, the 7th one on nature and city in the new climatological regime, we look forward to organizing it in person. Xavier, you have the floor.
Good evening, everyone. Bona tarda, buenas tardes a todas. Gracias en primer lugar a la Bienal.
Good evening. I would like to thank the Biennial and the organizing team on behalf of the Town Hall of Barcelona and on my own behalf. I think it is an honor to be able to be with you here on site. Congratulations for this 11th edition of this International Biennial on landscape architecture that allows us to frame this topic in order to deal with the challenges from the perspective of the landscape, which is a magical word that allows us to talk about everything, that defines our physical space and emotional space. And also, given the current complexities, given the pandemic, I would like to congratulate you for the organization. In my session, I think I can click myself, or so I was promised. Yes. My talk today is all about sharing with you some of the reflections and some of the projects that we are undertaking in the city on behalf of the ones that are currently in charge of defining projects in Barcelona, pivoting around the city of city and nature, which is a constant two-factor relationship, and surrounding the idea of climate change again, which is the hashtag of this event. And these are the combinations that allow us to launch interesting reflections. It's interesting to see that the city, which at the onset arises as a refuge city, in order to seek refuge against the uncontrollable nature, becomes the opposite. Now in the city we need to seek nature in order to seek refuge from the city, like Quasimodo from Italo Calvino, who was taking refuge from his family in the trees. So the question is whether we need to have a refuge of nature, in nature of the city, or whether we should transform cities. And I think that pretty much defines certain strategies that we streamline, which are the ones that we're going to present. We're not going to see large landscape architecture projects or large transformations, but rather we're going to take a look at medium or small scale projects. But as we were explained in the previous session, they are bold. We want to be courageous enough in order to undertake with a high level of engagement and commitment one of the urgent challenges, which is the climate challenge. I don't know whether there's still someone in the planet that hesitates or that doubts about the challenges posed by the climate change. This climatic urgency or emergency forces us to compose a new urban model that allows us to face the challenges posed by the climate change. In my slide, you could see the people that are the authors, but apparently you cannot see it here. But Ambrogio Rangetti, in their paintings displayed in Siena Palace, they talk about the effects of a good or bad governance on the terrain, so it's an early warning for us. We're not going to be capable of improving our cities unless we improve the territory. We're not going to prevent the detrimental effects of climate change unless we can save our cities. So when we're talking about cities, nature, climate change, and urban model, we need to talk about the conditionings and the relations established of all kinds between raw materials and mobility between the city and the surrounding territory. And if we have a good governance of the city, this is going to be accompanied by a good governance of the terrain. We can talk about Barcelona, but we can expand it to almost all cities in the world. Even though in Barcelona we have some specificities that force us to think in terms of certain specific strategies. It is a very compact urban network of high density, and currently there is unfortunately a high level of acoustic and atmospheric pollution. And we need to add to this the lack of green spaces all around the city. Here we can see a graph. I think that it's written too small, but you can see the colors, but from red to yellow, we're talking about the standards of green spaces in relation to the inhabitants, and we're talking about a deficit of green spaces, and we don't have large green spaces as opposed to some other cities. Barcelona is mainly a street-based city. Later on, we're going to move to the value of the streets and the need to rethink which is the role that streets should take on when facing the climate change challenge. When faced with all these conditioning factors, what can we do? I think first and foremost, we need to stop polluting. We need to stop contaminating. We cannot continue to suggest improving or enlarging green spaces and improving the environmental quality unless we try to reduce the emissions. And this picture was published in March 2020. Amidst the lockdown, we lived a magical moment in which we could discover a city which was absolutely different because the contamination had disappeared. The atmosphere contamination had disappeared. We had great visibility. We saw a lowering of the noise. It was possible for us to smell, to listen to one another, and the landscape of the city changed at that time because of that simple action of stopping contamination. And then to recover spaces, to stop contamination and to recover spaces. Currently in Barcelona, the surface devoted to roads and to mobility makes up more than 60% of the public surface, and we have 8 million square meters of asphalt. And there is a scope for recovery of that public space, and that's one of the objectives that we set. We're thinking about how to reallocate this space, not just for social usages and for the improvement of contamination, but also in order to reduce pollution. So we're talking about 8 million square meters of asphalt that need to be conceived as quite a daunting challenge, and we need to see how to transform a large surface in environmental, social conditions. These pictures were taken. It was March the 8th, 2020, the first time when we cut traffic on a Sunday morning in Aragon Street. We cut it, we opened the street to people, and we could also live a different city just because it was walkable from pivoting axes such as is the street of Aragon. In the crossing with Meridiana, that was where the picture was taken. And here, this corresponds to the very same day where the Tapias Foundation, and this was interesting, when there was a new space which was non-existing before in the city, it generates requests And activities like the one we can see, the Tapias Foundation brought a piano in the middle of the street, and we were sitting in Aragon and listening to music in the middle of the street, which was unseen until then. So the possibility to recover spaces in order to undertake new activities is really great. And then we also have the need to redefine new intervention tools. We are aware of the fact that to recover a large space of public surfaces and to transform it into new uses and possibilities, catering to the needs posed by the climate change challenges and the scarcity of resources, require some new intervention tools. And we have a tactic intervention in the so-called Superilla of Sant Antoni. And we gathered some images from tactic interventions that allow the city to recover the recuperated space that used to be asphalt devoted to the roads. And here we can see the distribution plot of the schools. We have 600 educational facilities, and it's like an acupuncture map of hotspots where it is conceivable to think that if we improve the surrounding public spaces pivoting around those educational centers, we have the possibility to improve on a systemic point of view all those public spaces. And we have the program which is called Protect Schools, Protegim les Escoles in Catalan, and we can see some pictures thereof. And in this month, we have recovered and expanded the surrounding spaces in 100 schools during this month, and we have some small interventions. We're talking about bold and engaged projects, engaged with the climate change, and we have the recovery of spaces in moments where there is some reluctance because of the pandemic, etc., and there is the need to spend time outdoors. And we also have the opportunity to discover the need of economic promotion, which is the urgency in order to have more spaces for restaurant terraces, and that's what we did. We had some provisional actions undertaken in order to incorporate these terraces or gardens for the restaurants for the purpose of restoration, and then you can recuperate this kind of asphalt surfaces, stop contaminating, recover space, and naturalize the city. And we have a recently published document which is called the 2030 Nature Plan for Barcelona, which streamlines the goals and strategies to be undertaken by the city in all the actions steering towards naturalization, following three axes. There is a great deficit of green spaces, so we need to expand the green surface. Second pillar is how to improve the current green spaces and how to improve in terms of quality and efficiency, the maintenance of the pre-existing green spaces, and thirdly, and most importantly, how can we do this with and for the citizenship? And we're convinced that an increase in the green spaces and the naturalization is going to be based on the co-ownership and the engagement that we can achieve with the citizens. Naturalization of the city through the transformation of big mobility arteries such as the Meridiana Avenue and some large infrastructures such as the Glorias node, where there was like a concrete drum structure which currently is going to harbor a new central green park for free usage, but also it's going to encompass some surrounding housing and some surrounding dwelling infrastructures to renaturalize the network of mobility. And here we can see the Chifre rooftop project recently awarded with the Bauhaus Award by the EU. And I think it's amazing to see the capacity where you can relate the trees from the city together with that canopy in the rooftop with the perspective of Montjuic Mount, and the need to understand this need for continuity, for the relationship between the different kinds of green spaces and different realms of nature in the rooftops, in the tree, the streets, and then the mountain. We have the possibility of converting 370 hectares of rooftop surfaces into naturalized spaces, so it's going to have a great effect. And then we have the possibility and the need to reintroduce nature in those spaces, which as a result of the urban transformation have led to some areas where some finishes were pending. We could see the project for the rooftops and for these kinds of facades where we want to accelerate the recovery of the heritage in architecture and also the natural dimension. And then we also have the need to recuperate schools as spaces for nature. So we have the so-called shelter school project, where we could recover 11 schools as climate shelters, and we want to continue to move on towards the recuperation of these kinds of surfaces, which unfortunately are waterproof right now and devoted to asphalt. And then the possibility to reintroduce the agricultural use in the land of the city. In Barcelona, we have more than 400 urban horticultural gardens, so there is a huge potential in order to introduce agricultural land use amidst the city. And then, to naturalize the city, we need to improve the resilience of the city when faced with climate change challenges and new construction solutions. Here we can see firstly a sustainable drainage system in the city, and the need to integrate nature and landscape architecture in the middle of the city so that we can better manage the water cycle and to achieve more resilience towards high temperatures, etc. And then I finish with the coastline. Barcelona is a maritime city, which is sometimes a factor that we neglect. The coastline, you can see here the comparison between the 50s until right now. It is artificialized. It has been recuperated from the original geographical structures and thus facing a high level of risk against when faced with the climate change challenges. And the sea does not begin in the coastline, but in the city itself, and the Mediterranean begins at the Pyrenees. So we need to conceive new ways in which we can relate to the sea, and these are the finalists of some finalists of the biennial that deal with the relationship with the water, with the river, with the sea. And here we need to conceive how to relate to the sea in Barcelona, in our case, and the Mediterranean Sea at that, in our case. And then the need to structure things. Unless we have the capacity to restructure the green surfaces that we create, it makes no sense. And that's what we're trying to achieve through the change of scale of the Superilla, superblock in Barcelona, which up until then had some confined areas like Sant Antoni neighborhood or Poblenou neighborhood, but we have the proposal to make it more scalable and to reorganize the mobility of the city, prioritizing public transportation, bicycles and pedestrians in order to liberate space, in order to introduce nature and to assign it to public uses, and the idea of superillas or superblocks defines a new environmental infrastructure for the whole of the city. And maybe you would think, well, this should not stop at the realm or the scope of Barcelona. Yes, that's precisely our idea, and I think Ramon Torra probably referred to this. We want to create a metropolitan scale infrastructure network, or even on a regional scale. And we also have the need, I'm sorry, but I have lost some images along the way, apparently. Sorry, but apologies, but here we should see an overlapping image of the Eixample neighborhood, where we illustrate that we need to scale it on an urban level, but also to render it closer to the citizens in the infrastructure, so that we incorporate all the closeness for all citizens. And in the area of the Eixample, we have identified 21 new green axes, horizontally and vertically, on a larger scale. And in these crossings between the green spaces, we can see some new plazas of 2,000 square meters that are going to become a new space for the introduction of nature in the city, and therefore an infrastructure that has the purpose of inducing a systemic transformation and some relationships of closeness and proximity for all the citizens in the city of Barcelona. Apologies, but you could not see the picture here. And then we have a new environmental infrastructure which is accompanied by a new way of conceiving the streets. Barcelona is a street-based city. We are not a park-based city. So if we want to improve the environmental conditions for the whole of the city and to generate a new environmental infrastructures, if we want to reconnect the pre-existing green spaces and the ones we're going to create, we need to do that through the streets. So we have the proposal of rethinking how streets should be, that should allow us to reconnect and to build a new environmental infrastructure. And there are 4 or 5 key takeaway messages. We need to understand that the streets are 3-dimensional, and then we have the need to understand the subsoil on a natural scale, how to improve the subsoil and the soil composition and quality in order to improve water management, among others. And then we also have the need to understand that the public space transformations, in order to naturalize the city, need to serve the purpose of reactivating the relationships between the city, the citizens, and the local businesses, and to improve what can be done at the lower levels of height. So we need to understand this environmental infrastructure as a mechanism of generating social action, the need to innovate in our solutions, in new materials, new constructive solutions that allow us precisely to understand the space as linked by the infrastructure. And then the integration of the landscape heritage, integration of landscape and heritage, the pre-existing heritage or legacy elements that define the identity of different spaces, and the trees and the architecture in the Eixample neighborhood are very definitory. And then we have the need to incorporate the gender perspective and accessibility aspects. Let me move quickly. And then we need to reinterpret the subsoil. These are some pictures of the competition launched last year in order to select 8 teams that are drafting the executive projects for the first green spaces and first 4 plazas or squares. We need to reinterpret the subsoils that previously just underpinned or supported the weight of the vehicles, and the subsoils were not thought in environmental terms, so we need to rethink that. And then we have the opportunity to rethink or to reinforce the urban tree canopy, understood as a continuous, ongoing structure along the city. And here we have some images of the green axis and how we moved from some legacy scattered tree structures with the possibility of building continuity, tree canopies with higher density and more diversity. So we have the clear, obvious decision that if the cars would not have existed in the Eixample neighbors, the trees would occupy a central area. They would not be at the sides of the street. So we have the possibility of relocating in the street some new trees, the ones that can have a larger scope in the central area in order to foster its canopy features, and then the possibility to introduce some new species, some new kinds of trees that render it closer to the human scale and provide with this feeling of closeness. So we have the possibility of building a new urban canopy using the legacy canopy and the newly introduced canopy, thus creating a new concept for the streets. In the plot, we can see the possibility of transforming 21 crossings that are occupied by the asphalt and the vehicles into a new space with a high capacity to become a new green space. And we have some images from the competition where you can see an illustration of the high potential for transformation of those spaces. Just to give an idea, 2,000 square meters is the surface of the majority of the Gracia neighborhood squares. So we're talking about the possibility of generating 21 squares for proximity in the Eixample neighborhood, which does not boast that characteristic until now, and there's going to be an important density of nature. So to structure and to study is important. I think there is a pioneer program boosted by the Municipal Institute for Landscape Architecture. We have the different studies of landscape architecture in the city, and 14 studies have been carried out, 14 urban landscape studies have been carried out, and we need to continue to generate knowledge and to disseminate the knowledge surrounding landscape and the concepts of landscape that bring us closer to the territorial reality. This is the Mombao study, and they allow us to understand the relationships with the territory, and in some cases it allows for the locals to understand which are the fragilities and the weakest points that we need to protect. Let me end with a reflection, which is the critical threshold of nature in the city. We usually talk about maximizing and increasing the green spaces, but we should be aware of the fact that there should be some limit from a functional load standpoint, from an economic standpoint also, and it is a real threshold, and those of us in charge of managing public resources need to deal with that on a constant basis. So we have the need to think how to relate to one another as citizens, and with the nature, and how to preserve the green spaces. If we want to increase the green spaces, some structural changes need to be undertaken in the administration, and right now we're talking about a surface of 8 million square meters of asphalt, which is really easy to maintain. If we want to turn that into natural spaces, it takes some maintenance, and it needs to induce some changes in administration and induce some changes in the behavior of us citizens in terms of how we relate to the green spaces. And here I finish with this not green but yellow color square that illustrates the relationship between streets and trees. This is the San Felipe Neri Square, the historic downtown area, and we have these kinds of trees that were planted after the aviation bombings by the Italians, and where there were 3 houses that were destroyed because of the bombings. These tipuanas were planted These rosewood or tipuana trees were planted as a commemoration of those 3 houses that were destroyed, and they commemorate this relationship between nature and citizens.
Well, thank you very much, Xavier Matilla, for this beautiful presentation of the different actions carried out in the city of Barcelona, which is always in the vanguard of how to deal with public space. Now, we will give the floor to the presentation of the different members of the jury of the Rosa Barba Award. In this case, we are going to present our extraordinary Portuguese Dr. Cristina Castelbraco.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon.
¿Me están oyendo?
Can you hear me?
¿Cómo está el son?
Can you hear me? She's asking.
Hola.
Hello.
Bueno, pues voy a pasar lo que me han pedido
I'm
y
going
agradecervos,
to say what I've been
Jordi
asked.
Belmont,
And thank you very much,
gracias
Jordi
por
Belmont.
esta
Thank you very much
posibilidad de
for giving
ser
me
parte
the
del
possibility
jurado.
to be part of the jury.
Yo estoy también
I am
agradeciendo a
also
Marina Cervera en
thankful
su
to
heroica
Marina Cervera for
tarea.
her heroic
And I'm going
task.
to change into
Y ahora
English,
paso al inglés.
and also thank the
Y
jury
quiero
members
agradecer
for
también
the
a los
work we
miembros
have
del
done.
jurado por
I
el
wonder
trabajo
if
que han
you are
hecho
seeing me.
y llevado a cabo. Me pregunto si me ven.
Hello.
¿Me ven?
Hello.
¿Hola?
Are you seeing me?
¿Me ven? Sí que la vemos, le pueden
Well,
decir.
I will go on.
Bueno, pues voy a continuar. Sí, te
I can
vemos.
go on?
¿Puedo seguir?
Can I go on?
Yes.
¿Puedo
Yes.
continuar?
So,
Sí, fantástico.
thank you very much.
Así pues,
I'm going to
muchísimas
present,
gracias. Lo que voy a hacer es
some of the
principios
principles
algunos
that,
de los
have been
principios
in our minds,
que hemos tenido en mente. En mente.
Can you see the
No sé si ven
presentation
ustedes la
at this point?
presentación ahora.
Can you see the presentation at this point?
Sí, perfecto.
Yes. So I will go on.
Pues voy a continuar
I'm
entonces.
just giving you
Y
the principles of our office here.
voy a darles los
We
principios de
believe
nuestro
that
despacho.
these, landscape
Nosotros
architecture
pensamos que el
principles used in,
paisajismo
ACB
y el
are a little
principio
different than
que
normal
se utiliza en
because
ACB
they
son un poco
rely on
distintos a
history,
lo normal
thinking
porque se
that
basan
history is
en la
continuity.
historia, pensando
It
que la
looks ahead
continuidad de
just
la
as
historia
it looks
miran
back. Tradition is
adelante y
progress that has
atrás. La
been
tradición
successful.
es un
And the
progreso que ha
major role
tenido
of
éxito. El
tradition
principal
plays
papel de la
is allowing
tradición
progress to become
es
part of
permitir que el
tradition,
progreso
just as
forme parte
tradition
de la
becomes
tradición
part of
como la
progress.
tradición
To
se
study
convierte
the
en
study
parte
of
del
ancient
progreso.
solutions
El
polished by
estudio de
centuries of
las
use
soluciones
inspire
publicado por
contemporary solutions.
siglos de uso
All
inspirado
design
por
of
soluciones
fountains,
contemporáneas,
walls,
el diseño de
systems, and all
fuentes,
the
paredes,
aesthetical use of
sistemas,
natural processes,
escaleras,
working with earth
procesos
forces, and
estéticos,
since they are in
trabajando con
balance with the
fuerzas de la
ecosystem,
tierra
they've been
equilibradas con
able
el
to survive.
ecosistema
What
que han
is
podido
important here
sobrevivir.
is
Lo
that
que es
we believe
importante
that
aquí es que
responding to
nosotros
climate
creamos que
change
responder
with
al cambio
pre-fossil fuel
climático
solutions
con
can be
soluciones
an interesting
preconcebidas
way
puede ser
of
quizá
designing.
una manera interesante
These
de
solutions have
diseñar.
proved
Estas
durable,
soluciones han
resistant,
resultado
and
ser durables,
ecological. So I
resistentes y
start with this
ecológicas. Así
palace
pues,
of
voy a
frontera, where
empezar
you can
con
see
este
the
palacio de
reflection, the
frontera
very
donde
smart
vemos
way
el
of doing the
reflejo, una
reflection.
manera inteligente de
We
conseguir
have
un
used it in
reflejo. Se ha
contemporary
utilizado también
work. This
en
is a
obras
2000 year, that
contemporáneas.
was the
Esto
2000
es una
2000
obra
project that was prized
del
in a
2000
national
con un premio
competition,
en un
and we
concurso
really use
internacional y
and
realmente
reuse the
nosotros
idea
utilizamos
that
y
having
reutilizamos la
water
idea
elements
de
can
tener
be
elementos
of
de agua
very
que puede
important
ser
and inspiring
muy
solutions.
importante e
We
inspirador
use
como
it
solución.
every so often,
Nosotros lo utilizamos
and
con
we also
frecuencia
use
y
some
también utilizamos
absolute inspiration
algunas
reused
inspiraciones
in
absolutas.
contemporary
Las
design.
utilizamos en
This
el
is the
diseño
contemporary
contemporáneo.
design of a
Este es
new
el diseño
orange
contemporáneo
orchard in
del
Palacio
nuevo
Frontera,
jardín de
designed by
naranjos
ACB.
en Palacio
We
Fronteira,
also
diseñado
have,
por ACB. También
we also have, let's say,
tenemos,
the
como diría,
influence
la
of
influencia
this important element you
de
all
este
know from
elemento
Patio de las
importante que
Mirtos
conocen de Patio
in a
de las
contemporary
Mixto
design
en
in
el diseño
Cascais that
contemporáneo
was done
en
in
Cascais,
2005 by
que se hizo en el
ACB.
2005 por
And
ACB. y nosotros lo utilizamos por la noche. Funciona muy bien con el juego de luces y este diseño que podemos ver aquí a lo lejos es el que utilizamos también con las paredes y los sistemas. Los sistemas son los elementos principales que deberíamos estar reutilizando, igual que hemos visto en la presentación anterior. Deberían ser una manera de preservar el agua que cae en todas partes, sobre todo en el clima mediterráneo. Necesitamos el agua para el verano, estamos hablando de 5 o 6 meses de clima árido y tenemos que mantener el agua. Por lo tanto, algunas de estas soluciones que nosotros hemos diseñado con estos elementos contemporáneos realmente están bajo la influencia del Islam y los elementos importantes que podemos encontrar como estrategias para poder vivir en un mundo como ellos vivían. Por lo tanto, aquí tenemos algunas de los muros que se han utilizado y evidentemente utilizamos también la piedra portuguesa calzada para la pavimentación, porque hemos heredado unos elementos inspiradores de Caningra de 200 años antes de Cristo y por lo tanto nosotros hemos jugado de nuevo con el basalto y la caliza. Se trata de un premio Palladio de 1986, el primero que ganamos en ACB, y también intentamos utilizar los sistemas de agua para las fuentes y el alcantarillado. Y el agua fluye gracias a la gravedad y esto nos da la posibilidad de fluir mediante la gravedad. Es muy interesante, muy rural, hay elementos vernáculos que se pueden reutilizar y que pueden ser una fuente de sombra, como utilizamos en nuestro despacho. Todo está con sombra para poder permitir no solamente sombra, sino que haya menos calor. El uso de paredes verdes como los cipreses, que seguramente conocerán, puede ser también una manera muy interesante e incluso el diseño de ellos en algunos escenarios muy contemporáneos. El reflejo de figuras aisladas en el agua, como podemos ver, de donde procede Buldermas, es el primero que dice me influye Frontaira, porque ha sido un efecto increíble de la cerámica reflejada en el agua y utilizando de nuevo el agua almacenada. Hemos añadido un espejo que crea una imagen barroca de transformar la imagen y también nos gusta jugar con la luz y con muchas de las sombras que podemos ver aquí en el convento del siglo XVI, la proyección de las sombras que se utiliza y también la transparencia de elementos muy antiguos, sobre todo elementos materiales. Es imposible no entrar totalmente en Machu Picchu, en Perú, y en su diseño. Y después el uso de estos ángulos, se trata de ángulos de 8 grados que utilizan y tenemos y hemos reinterpretado yo en un jardín particular en el 2008. Y el diseño final, que también es un elemento de cambio climático. El anfiteatro de Coimbra del 2008, que ha recibido también un premio nacional, es la idea de la permeabilidad, que es importante, como hemos visto en las calles de Barcelona, y después el almacenamiento del agua de tormentas en este diseño, que es un tema importante aquí, porque hay inundaciones, y también utilizar la vista de la ciudad, abrir la vista a la ciudad, pues subiendo estas pequeñas montañitas. El reflejo en los lagos, que es algo que utilizamos también, como hemos dicho, pero ahora por la noche, y evidentemente el uso de estos elementos como festival de música, trayendo los elementos sociales y los elementos artísticos juntos. Así pues, para compartir con ustedes los distintos elementos y principios del diseño que tengo en mente como miembro del jurado para el premio Rosa Barba, que acabamos hoy, y estoy muy contenta de participar.
the jury of the Rosa Barba Prize.
Gracias,
And
miembro
now
del
I
jurado
want to
Rosa Barba.
introduce you
Y ahora me gustaría
Esteban
presentarles
León,
a Esteban
architect and
León, que
representative
es
of the
arquitecto
Resilience
y
Hub
representante
of the
de la
UNESCO.
mitad
He has been member
brasileña
also
de
of the
UNESCO, ha
Rosa
sido
Barba
miembro
Prize
también
jury.
del jurado
Esteban, when you are
Rosa
ready, you have the
Barba.
floor.
Esteban, cuando estés listo, tienes la palabra.
Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias.
Can you hear me?
¿Me oyen?
Yeah.
I have to apologize.
Sí. Me disculpo porque mi cámara no funciona. Solo pueden ver mi imagen y oír mis palabras. No sé si inglés o español es lo mejor. Imagino que el español será mejor porque hay más oyentes que hablen español ahí. Así que voy a cambiar. It's a great pleasure for me to be with all of you. It has been a pleasure to be part of the jury of the Rosa Barba Prize. And in reality, I work for ONU Habitat, not for UNESCO. And for us, it was very interesting and very important to take part in this because UN Habitat has its offices of resilient cities, the global program of resilient cities in Barcelona, and we are thankful to the municipality of Barcelona for having welcomed us in Barcelona and have provided us with a good team in order to be able to work on resilient cities, which goes beyond the city of Barcelona at a worldwide level. So this is a global program, and the idea of the program is precisely knowing that the world has converted and that humanity is urban right now, that most of the population inhabits cities. It is very important for us to make sure that we are building sustainable cities and that this process of urban planning coincides with this. Therefore, I think that it's very important to receive this prize. It's very important the approach that has been taken. I really like the presentation of Barcelona, the previous presentation, because not only shows but underlines and gives us reasons for opening our offices in Barcelona. So the fact that we recognize that difficult times are coming, and the COVID has been just a strike, but the stronger strike is coming with climate change, and that we are getting ready precisely to respond, to recover, and to be able to rebuild ourselves from events. With events such as this one is very important in the future. So the fact that we have been involved in this process, selection process for the Rosa Barba Prize has been an enriching experience from this point of view. With no doubt, modern architecture has to consider the effects of climate change and also the different changes that are happening, potential shocks and potential stresses that all cities and urban system and maintain. So this is the fundamental premise of the program. And working along this line, we have been able to execute and implement many projects from all over the world. And with this objective, with the objective of making sure that any urban development takes into account the different challenges that we are facing. And as part of this, also to take into account several global agreements that have been signed, such as the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement on Climate Change, and above all, the new urban agenda, which has been ratified and pronounced in 2016. And this is the line that we follow. Once again, thank you very much for the opportunity. I think it has been a very enriching process, learning and understanding this type of projects, which contribute to the wealth of our cities. And I hope that the decision will be hand in hand with this, thinking about the future and thinking about how have we been able to maintain several things and what are the things that we have to maintain in the future. Thank you very much. Thank you to all the members of the jury who have been patient enough to listen to me. Also during the meetings while I didn't have my camera on, and thanks to Marina Cervera for the kind invitation, and I hope that you enjoy the award-winning ceremony. Thank you. Thank you very much for this kind presentation. And now we are going to present as the final speech on climate change Anna Caterina Piras, and she's the representative of the Italian pavilion at the Venetian Biennial, and it's very important because we're going to make a connection with the pavilion in Venice, and therefore we will be present in the pavilion of Venice while we see her speech and her explanation. Anna Caterina, you have the floor. Ay. No.
Hola, buenas tardes a todos. Desde
Hello, good afternoon, everyone from the Parco della Ginara headquarters
que está en Cerdeña y
in Sardinia, and also from the Palimilio of Italy. We're going to share our presentation. There's a brief video also, and I think that mainly we are going to go to the presentation, okay?
In italiano. Buonasera a tutti. Faremo una presentazione un po' articolata perché siamo collegati sia con gli amici
Lo sentimos, pero no está prevista la traducción del italiano. Sorry, but translation from Italian has not been organized.
Parliamo di un'isola che si trova a nord di un'altra isola, l'isola di Sardegna. Ecco, l'isola di cui parliamo è l'isola dell'Asinara, un'isola di 52 km quadrati, un'isola che ha avuto una storia recente molto particolare.
It had a very recent history.
E questo ha permesso di poter conservare delle aree di particolare pregio in uno stato, diciamo, di conservazione eccellente. Qua abbiamo ad esempio uno scorcio di una spiaggia e di tutto un sistema però di vegetazione di retrospiaggia, di retrodunale, che è molto peculiare, diciamo, caratterizzato da medicini. Qua abbiamo una visione dell'isola che, come si vede, ha una forma allungata con due versanti asimmetrici. Il punto più alto dell'isola è di 402 metri.
The highest point of the island is of 402 meters.
Questo è il versante orientale e già emerge una delle caratteristiche di quest'isola. Non presenta una grande presenza di strade, anzi possiamo dire che abbiamo un'unica strada ai mezzi, che è questa strada che vedete in bianco, perché all'Asinara non esiste l'asfalto.
There is no asphalt throughout the whole island.
Un'altra caratteristica di quest'isola è che durante la notte abbiamo il buio, quindi
Another very peculiar
sono
side
una
of the island
serie
is that
di
during the night it
gestioni
gets
particolari legate
amazingly
a
dark, so we need peculiar
questo
adjustments
fenomeno
about
che è assolutamente naturale, ma che non è così consueto. E questo si accompagna anche al silenzio, che è un altro elemento
another main
caratteristico.
characteristic is of course the silence.
Nell'isola poi abbiamo centinaia di testimonianze sotto forma di tracce della presenza umana che è presente sull'isola da 4000 a.C.
Previous
e sono
civilization
presenti
throughout the island that you can see,
ruderi
mainly ruins from
che
previous
testimoniano
civilization.
dei passaggi, diciamo, nel corso appunto dei millenni.
They're a testament of the passage of time throughout the millennia.
Abbiamo anche degli insediamenti organizzati, questo è il borgo più importante, si trova a nord dell'isola, è il borgo di Cala d'Oliva.
We have more modern settings. As far as you can see, this is a burg inside the island.
Nonostante questa organizzazione che è visibile da questa immagine, l'isola oggi è, possiamo dire che è disabitata, o perlomeno ha pochissime persone.
Organization, it hosts very few people as
E
inhabitants.
sono per motivi sostanzialmente istituzionali, quindi legati alla presenza del Parco Nazionale e a tutti quegli enti di supporto alla gestione, dagli organi di sorveglianza agli enti che sono impegnati nella gestione della flora e della fauna dell'isola.
Mainly about the preservation of the nature of the island itself.
Tutto questo perché l'Asinara dal 1885 al 1997 è stata una colonia penale, un carcere
Since 1885
e una
throughout
sezione sanitaria
years
di
till
quarantena,
1997 it was
sanitaria
a
internazionale di quarantena.
and quarantine site.
Questa è un'immagine, diciamo, di metà del secolo scorso, dove si vedono dei detenuti che lavorano, diciamo,
Of half a century ago
le
and
terre
shows some
di
inmates
questi,
working the land.
perché sostanzialmente i detenuti che venivano rinchiusi, che avevano delle pene importanti, però potevano, diciamo, lavorare, quindi in realtà venivano rinchiusi solamente durante il periodo notturno. Anche se poi a partire dagli anni 70 l'Asinara è stata un carcere di massima sicurezza, anzi possiamo dire il carcere più importante d'Italia.
From the 70s, the island was the maximum security prison
Per
by
la lotta
excellence,
delle criminalità organizzate,
especially to
contro il
fight against
terrorismo.
organized crime, mafia especially.
E chiaramente questo percorso è una pagina importante della storia dell'isola che stiamo approfondendo attraverso lo studio degli archivi storici.
This route that we're taking together is a very important passage of what the island represents for everybody.
Questa è un'immagine invece che ci mostra l'altra pagina dell'isola, che è quella della stazione sanitaria. In particolare, durante la Prima Guerra Mondiale, l'Asinara ha ospitato 24.000 prigionieri austro-ungarici malati di colera, di tifo, 7.000 dei quali sono morti sull'isola prima di essere poi
And some of them died, but many were treated here.
In Francia per completare la loro prigionia. Ecco, questo isolamento che, sommando il periodo del carcere al periodo del parco, insomma a 136 anni, ha fatto sì che nell'isola, un'isola diciamo piuttosto importante, ci sia una ricca flora vegetazione e fauna. Per esempio qua avete alcuni numeri dell'Asinara, con 701 entità. Ma l'aspetto importante è che di queste 35 sono specie endemiche, quindi caratteristiche di questo territorio. Ad esempio abbiamo questo paleoendemismo, una specie relitta, fiordaliso spinoso, la taurea orrida, e sono degli indicatori molto importanti in un'ottica di appunto monitoraggio dei fenomeni legati ai cambiamenti climatici. Questo è un altro endemismo specifico, la Susa crispa, in direttiva. Un'altra specie importante che viene continuamente monitorata è la margherita piccolissima, la Nanantea perfusilla, è un'altra specie indicatrice appunto di situazioni climatiche particolari. La fauna è una fauna particolarmente ricca sia di invertebrati che di vertebrati. Anche in questo caso, diciamo, ci sono una serie di attività di monitoraggio, ad esempio sulla avifauna abbiamo un osservatorio ornitologico internazionale che studia negli anni le migrazioni di molte di queste specie che dall'Africa vanno verso il nord d'Europa e viceversa. Abbiamo una banca dati di oltre 20 anni di osservazioni che danno un'indicazione molto precisa sulla variazione delle condizioni climatiche che sta vivendo il nostro pianeta, quindi con delle variazioni nella loro composizione e nei loro numeri. Queste sono, diciamo, delle attività che vengono fatte 2 volte all'anno, nella stagione. Poi abbiamo dei vertebrati ovviamente che vengono monitorati, diciamo, all'interno dell'isola, come gli equidi. Questa è la caratteristica specie con la varietà albina dell'asino, descritto proprio come asino dell'asinara, è la varietà albina dell'asino grigio. E questi sono, diciamo, dei piccoli di muflone, che è un'altra specie, che è un altro ungulato presente sull'isola dell'Asinara. Intorno abbiamo un'area marina protetta, caratterizzata da 27 biocenosi marine. L'area marina protetta è il vero scrigno di biodiversità dell'Asinara, perché è quella che ha avuto i maggiori vantaggi di questo isolamento.
And the seaside is what gained the most from being isolated from the rest. Oh. No.
You are muted, Anna Catarina.
Dicevamo appunto che questa immagine ci mostra
So this image shows, as we were saying,
una tartaruga marina, perché abbiamo un osservatorio del mare che effettua attività di monitoraggio sulle principali specie marine dal 2004, e quindi anche in questo caso abbiamo una serie storica di dati che mettono in evidenza, accompagnate dalle misurazioni, ad esempio, sulla dell'acqua a diverse profondità, che evidenziano l'innalzamento della temperatura e già delle modifiche, diciamo, nelle composizioni delle specie. In particolare stiamo monitorando la parte più superficiale, che è quella più delicata, dove sono presenti delle specie caratteristiche come la patella gigante, il litofilo unisoido, l'Istoseira, e in basso a destra la prateria posidonia oceanica, che è presente con circa 4.000 ettari all'interno dell'area marina protetta dell'isola dell'Asinara, posidonia che noi possiamo considerare come la specie simbolo del Mediterraneo e che noi abbiamo scelto nell'allestimento che poi abbiamo portato alla Biennale di Venezia. Qua siamo con Anna Caterina in uno degli ambienti costieri dell'isola dell'Asinara che abbiamo voluto poi ricostruire appunto a
Posidoni
che hanno una grandissima importanza nell'assorbimento della CO2 e nello stoccaggio soprattutto e poi sulle spalle invece avete la vegetazione con quegli endemismi che vi dicevo. E qua abbiamo l'allestimento che appunto ripropone quell'immagine, quello scorcio che abbiamo visto prima con la posidonia alla base e una parete.
And this setting will show you again the setup that me and Anna Caterina showed you before, just from a different angle.
Okay, now I'm going to switch in English.
Ahora voy a pasar al inglés, lo siento por la primera parte que ha sido en italiano, pero como seguramente sabrán, estamos transmitiendo aquí en el pabellón italiano, por lo tanto utilizamos el italiano. Muy bien, pues estoy muy orgullosa de haber creado esta instalación con el director. Lo sentimos, pero es que escuchamos la traducción al italiano. Y de la Bienal de Arquitectura, que nos han pedido también, evidentemente, de explicar algunas de las cosas que nosotros, en mi opinión, como comisaria del pabellón italiano, en cierto modo, presentamos también mi receta para nuestra práctica, para el futuro de nuestra práctica. ¿Y qué es lo que nosotros hemos decidido hacer? Pensando que el cambio climático y el futuro del paisaje contemporáneo, para poder traer de manera sólida el paisaje presente y el paisaje de la isla de Asinara. La isla de Asinaria, como ya les he explicado, siempre ha sido un ejemplo de un acuerdo dedicado entre el ser humano, la presión natural y también los sistemas naturales delicados. ¿Qué hemos hecho? Pues literalmente hemos conseguido un paisaje resiliente, la comunidad resiliente del parque de Asinara dentro del pabellón italiano. Es la primera vez que, en cierto modo, un arquitecto ha decidido traer un dispositivo vivo, como nosotros hemos decidido hacer, y como vemos aquí, ha recreado el tierra para poder absorber y poder crear un entorno vivo real en el interior del pabellón. ¿Qué hemos hecho? Pues físicamente hemos transportado esta especie y realmente ha quedado claro para todos ustedes porque han visto las fotografías del director del Parque Nacional de Asinara y lo que hemos hecho, pues como pueden ver aquí a partir de este prospecto en esta fotografía es que hemos conseguido recrear evidentemente de modo antrópico Asinara, el paisaje de Asinara.
Y también hemos traído en este muro la Centaurea órida y otros endemismos que viven en la zona de Asinara. Así que creamos un dispositivo que va a encargarse de absorber las emisiones de CO2, una tonelada de emisiones de CO2 durante los 6 meses de la instalación.
Biennal of Architecture in Venice. As you can see, we recreated something that was, of course, is not a natural environment.
No es un entorno natural. Tenemos el cáñamo, tenemos este soporte de cáñamo y podemos ver el cistus que sigue viviendo ahí desde hace 5 años y está creciendo y generando este dispositivo natural. Y hemos decidido lanzar este mensaje tan fuerte como paisajistas porque consideramos que esta refleja la relación entre la arquitectura y el entorno. Y tiene que ser un todo en uno. No podemos concebir la arquitectura como separada del paisajismo. Esta es la receta que nosotros hemos decidido implantar y lanzar como mensaje en la Bienal de Arquitectura de Venecia, que como bien saben ha sido una de las primeras exposiciones que se han pospuesto y que se han abierto pese al coronavirus y pese a la pandemia que continúa. Así que hemos decidido encontrar la forma de sensibilizar a nuestros compañeros cuando piensan sobre el futuro de nuestra práctica profesional, porque pensamos que teníamos que adoptar un posicionamiento y dejar de pensar que las dos prácticas, arquitectura y paisajismo, tengan que estar separadas. No sé, probablemente se me haya acabado el tiempo, pero bueno, quiero resaltar en cualquier caso mi agradecimiento a todos ustedes por esta oportunidad que me han granjeado de compartir con ustedes nuestro trabajo en el pabellón italiano con el Parque Natural de Asinara y le cedo la palabra a ustedes. Muchísimas gracias por su atención.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ana Caterina, for your presentation. And it's true we are a little out of time, so we move to next moment. We'll have a break, about 45 minutes or so. In the meanwhile, we will have a carousel with the images of the Rosa Barbara Prize finalists that will be shown here in the screen and also in the
aquí en la pantalla y también
and we will have time to move around and we expect you to come back in 45 minutes.
Bueno, estirar un poco las piernas y nos vemos de nuevo de vuelta en 45 minutos.
el mar y el cielo con 7 garzas, 7 luceros, con 7 garzas, 7 luceros.
Waar dat we nu staan is eigenlijk het eerste gedeelte van de volledige heraanleg van de Scheldekaaien. De kaaimuur moest gestabiliseerd worden om nadien eigenlijk de publieke ruimte te kunnen heraanleggen. En ook een nieuwe waterkering, een verhoogde waterkering, om de stad te beschermen tegen hoogwaterstanden. Het idee om die kasseien en ook een aantal treinsporen te behouden was eigenlijk de vraag vanuit de buurt en vanuit het ontwerp om toch dat heel specifieke karakter van de kaaien ook in het ontwerp te bestendigen. Dit gedeelte hebben we eigenlijk een dijk aangelegd om de stad te beschermen tegen die hoge waterstanden. Aan de droge zijde kunnen we dan steeds een park realiseren. En aan de natte zijde is er natuurlijk een overstroombare zone en zal dus bij sommige periodes van het jaar het water over die kaaivlakte komen. En in dit stuk is er vooral gekozen voor een dijk en zicht te krijgen richting zowel de Schelde als naar de stad. En dat eigenlijk die verbinding tussen stad en water op die manier versterkt.
Ik jog hier eigenlijk vrij vaak en zo met het zicht op het water, dat maakt eigenlijk wel, dat geeft dus een beetje een tropisch gevoel.
De stad zelf is heel druk en hier is het zo wat rustiger, dus dat is gewoon zalig. Ik vind het mooi gedaan.
Ja, er is niks slecht over te zeggen eigenlijk. Het is een enorme verbetering. Dat ons belastingsgeld goed, of toch eens goed besteed wordt. Ja, fantastisch. Uitstekend. Hoe dat allemaal gebeurd is. Chapeau, echt waar.
Ik ben hier gisteravond nog geweest en gewoon de zonsondergang en de maan was super mooi. Ik vind het veiliger. Want gisteravond liep ik zo met mijn vriendin zo daarachter over de parking. Ik voelde me echt niet veilig.
Ja, ik vind het sowieso een verbetering. En je weet, denk je hier vroeger ook een parking was? Ja, vroeger was hij hier eigenlijk vrij saai. Er was hier helemaal niks.
De laatste jaren was de stad eigenlijk bijna niet meer verbonden met de Schelde, enkel als functionele ruimte voor te parkeren, maar het beleven van de stad langs het water, dat was volledig verloren gegaan. Dat is eigenlijk het belangrijkste aspect dat we willen herstellen in deze heraanleg, eigenlijk die Schelde teruggeven aan de Antwerpenaren.
Ja, ik vind het fantastisch, hè, want hoe minder parking, hoe minder auto's dat hier naar Antwerpen komen. Niet meer de parking van Antwerpen, maar de boulevard. Hier kunnen we ook flaneren, zitten, spelen, hangen. Dus dat is wel top. Ik denk dat vroeger die kaaimuur echt een muur was. Hè. Ik bedoel, er was de afscheiding tussen de stad en het water. Dat heb je nu niet. Je hebt nu wel wat meer verbinding met het water.
En dat er ook heel veel rust is aan het water en dat water heel veel bijbrengt voor het aangename stadsgevoel.
Ik kwam hier aan en dacht, oh, finally a place waar er niet te veel mensen komen, want daar is het echt drukker. Ik vind het hier zalig.
Dit is letterlijk skate- en longboard heaven. Belgische kustgevoel hier en dat is wel tof.
Het is gewoon een punt in Antwerpen waar je echt tot rust kunt komen en ik vond dat Antwerpen dat nog niet echt per se had en dat nu wel heeft.
Vroeger stond je muur daar en stonden er heel veel auto's gewoon. We are on my favorite place right now, standing. Because it's chill, you know, with the water, make me feel calm.
Vibrant as well, like a lot of people come together here.
Durante el siglo XX, el crecimiento urbano y el desarrollo de la industria en la ciudad impulsaron la canalización del río Medellín y la construcción de vías rápidas. Estas operaciones permitieron la conexión de ciudad con el resto del país y su desarrollo económico. Este eje, a pesar de consolidarse como el principal elemento de conectividad para la ciudad, generó una barrera hacia el río, rompiendo la continuidad transversal de la ciudad y la relación de esta con su más importante sistema natural estructurante, el río Medellín. Sin embargo, la respuesta que se le ha dado a través de los años a conexiones de largas distancias nacionales ha propiciado dinámicas de segregación urbana, desvinculando además los enlaces ambientales próximos. Al trazar el sistema vial al margen del río Medellín, se genera una barrera física donde los cruces transversales al río, especialmente los peatonales, son totalmente limitados. De igual manera, las cadenas bióticas ligadas a las quebradas y al río fueron interrumpidas, forzando la desaparición y emigración de especies, convirtiendo el río en un canal receptor de contaminación.
The first home, a tree.
Hoy, la ciudad busca darle la cara al río nuevamente. El reencuentro con el río Medellín será también un reencuentro con la naturaleza. Nos entenderemos nuevamente como parte de un ecosistema. Las estrategias de intervención del proyecto son: establecer el río como eje ambiental, integrar las quebradas al proyecto, integrar los vacíos verdes a la red ecológica, reciclar y rehabilitar infraestructuras, industrias y espacios abandonados con potencial. El río, como principal estructurante de nuestra geografía y nuestra ciudad, es la mayor oportunidad para generar una continuidad biótica en el Valle de Aburrá. Las quebradas, a su vez, tejen el ecosistema y permiten la conexión de espacios públicos entre el centro del valle y sus laderas. La articulación de zonas verdes configuradas, enlaces y nodos ambientales fragmentados por las vías y la arquitectura terminan de componer la red ecológica y peatonal. El Parque Botánico es entonces un proyecto que, a partir de la reestructuración de los ecosistemas, genera entornos de formación y aprendizaje, fortaleciendo nuestros vínculos con la naturaleza y el territorio, generando finalmente una cultura ambiental. El plan piloto, adyacente al Centro de Convenciones y Exposiciones, pretende ser el detonante de toda una transformación. Un tramo de verificación y reacción inmediata. El primer acercamiento a la idea de Parque Botánico.
I was taking care of this elderly gentleman who lives up on Columbia Heights, and I was describing to him what was happening on the piers. He had a big picture of the piers with all the warehouses on them from when he first moved here with the ships and everything out there. And he was in his 80s. He was blind. He was sort of housebound all the time. And once they opened, I said, I really want to bring you out of the house, take you to the park, and take your shoes off and let you walk on the grass. That was a really special moment to be able to give that to him. And he died just a couple years ago, but it was It was one of those things that you think, okay, this is probably the only opportunity this man's going to have to come put his bare feet in the grass after living in Brooklyn all these years. I'm sorry. But we used to come out with our coffee and sit on the promenade and watch it develop. It was like watching Central Park be built. It's enriched our lives so much.
I have lived in Brooklyn Heights for 34 years, and we could just look at the waterfront through a chain link fence. Then this wonderful idea came up to build a beautiful park.
It accommodates so many different groups of people and animals and plants. You get to have so many perspectives from way up high and down lower and lower and lower until you're at the waterfront.
We just threw some rocks in the water and made wishes off of them. But we usually just stroll around, have some ice cream. It's just like a little escape from the city.
It's a beautiful place, and it sort of brings together nature and human beings in a very holistic environment. I just love this part right here. Although it looks like a thoroughfare, it's one of those little undiscovered spots and makes me work very well. I've done a lot of work sitting on a bench like this.
A few weeks ago on a Friday, I was working here and I heard some jazz music in the background. So when I got off from work, I walked towards where I heard the music, and there was this pop-up jazz that was happening. So I just sat there and I listened. It was a lovely evening.
What struck me about New York when I first started living here is how much water there was and how little access there was to it. And this park just kind of flipped that on its ear. It's just increased water access like you wouldn't believe.
For me, it's very peaceful. I go paddleboarding to just relax. I take my spot by the Manhattan Bridge, just sit down for a little bit, turn around and come back. And I just love it. This park is amazing for that.
This is like a meeting place, so like my friends from all over. I have friends right downtown in Red Hook, friends in East New York, Brownsville, Harlem, Queens. So we all come here to play because there's so many courts, you know, they all have nets and such a pretty scene.
We come here to ball. That's the best court over there. You come down, it's for the kids. It's like, it's beautiful to see that New York gets these kind of things. But yeah, man, it's a blessing to be here and have this here for us. Look at all the people out here, man. It's beautiful, we deserve this. Brooklyn.
Imagine a site located in the west of the Valley of Mexico, which for 50 years was continuously excavated. An open pit mine that through time was creating a huge sinkhole, a gap of 70 meters deep in an area of 40 hectares. Imagine that years later, the surrounding urban community wants to make a large park in that huge hole, and that for several years, there's a lot of debate between the community and the city authorities if more houses were made instead of a park. Imagine that after many negotiations and meetings, an agreement is reached, in which 70% of the total area is designated for the park and 30% for private housing are allocated, and that the real estate developers build the park and infrastructure in the public city land. This is a framework of a social, political, and economic context that supports the possibility of creating a new park of 29 hectares in the Santa Fe area in Coajimalpa, Mexico City, an area of accelerated growth without parks or public spaces. La Mexicana is a large-scale architecture and landscape architecture project, which aims to recycle an environmental good through its transformation, to turn it into a green, recreational community, playful and accessible space for everyone, children, young people, adults, and seniors. There are several main axes in the design of the park. The hybrid axis that extends longitudinally and that captures the rainwater in a bios well. There's a pedestrian axis that crosses the park in all its length and that offers different activities on platforms that result from a detailed observation and use of the topography, that become gardens that offer specific attractions, children areas or to walk your dogs, gardens to rest, gardens with overlooks, amphitheater, and a skate park. The park has different types of services, such as restaurants, cafes, and pet products stores distributed all along the routes, with the goal of covering the needs of the users. A large linear building integrated to the topography that will offer a true gourmet terrace has been located and designed. There is also a poetic axis, which sustains beauty, joy, and freedom through its two lakes and waterfalls. More than 4,000 people visit the park daily, having a maximum record of 25,000 people on weekends. Within the user, we can find inhabitants of the area, workers from nearby offices, families, children, students, and visitors from other areas of the city and metropolitan area. Around more than 43,000 users of the social media Instagram use the hashtag Parque La Mexicana and post the photos enjoying the amenities of the park, the landscapes, and the modern architecture of the buildings. So if you come to Mexico City, don't forget to visit La Mexicana Park.
Sawadika, my name is Kochkar Vara-Akom. I'm a landscape architect from Bangkok, Thailand. My calling in life is to make my city more resilient to climate change. Did you know that my city, Bangkok, is actually sinking more than 1 centimeter per year, which is 4 times faster than the rate of predicted sea level rise? Here is the paradox created by climate change. It's either too much of water or too little of the water. With too much of the water, it actually can create immediate disaster to my city. In paved Bangkok, only 15 minutes of rainfall can turn our city in chaos through traffic. We need to catch and keep this pouring rain so that it doesn't flood everywhere. I won a design competition to build Bangkok's first new public park in over 30 years, which opened in 2017. The park became a space for people to walk and exercise, but also it is helping city deal with its water. Built on a slope, the park captures rain and stores it for later use. This park has three main elements that work as one system. The first, the green roof. This is the biggest green roof in Thailand, with the rainwater tanks and museum underneath. In the dry season, the collected rain can be used to water the park up to a month. The runoff from the green roof then flows through wetlands with the native water plants that can help filter and help clean water. And at the lower end, the retention pond collects all of the water. Their exercise becomes an active part of the park water system. Place concrete with garden, with rain garden, with pond, wherever we can. It's not only look nicer and greener, it's also help catch more of the excess rain water. Don't fix nature, fix ourselves. We have to be a better job to create a better city, take more responsibility, take more action, so that our home, our city, can once again live with nature. So I'm talking to you here in Bangkok, Thailand. I hope you are all well in this difficult time, and I hope to see you all in person soon. Thank you.
The future of the global landscape is the most urgent design problem we face. The international geodesign collaboration is now in 160 universities in 56 countries. We have 140 completed studies by collaborative teams, most led by landscape architects. All studies share a design language, 10 systems, several scales, innovation-based scenarios, and assessment by the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. These real projects share common reporting formats. Comparisons of the IGC studies reveal systemic patterns of both similarity and difference. The IGC is enabling the people of the world to design its future.
No. Las habitaciones.
¿Esto es encendido o apagado?
Okay.
The first home, a tree. The first temple, the grove. The first city, a forest. The cosmic tree, the tree of life or knowledge, the mysterious ancestor that reaches us from the depths of the ages, that has its roots in heaven and its roots on earth. Perhaps it is Abraxas, the talisman of good and evil, that unites creative nature and the humanized city. Democritus, the father of modern physics, who already united all species with his atomistic theory, said that the tree is comparable to man turned upside down, with his head planted in the ground and his feet in the air. Why is this primordial legend so ingrained in the hermetism of all civilizations, and why, even so, does it seem to postulate itself as so foreboding? Probably the fear of death before the immensity of the telluric forces of the cosmos made primitive man seek in a being superior to the one he supposed capable of identifying and encompassing his universe. And perhaps also today, in the face of the climate crisis, the same awareness of survival is what moves us to combat this terror with the vital experience of our best leader, the tree. In a differential fact lies the conclusive spirit of the tree, in the spirit of the colony as a system of life. In biology, a colony is a group of living things organized under the collective cooperative forms. Perhaps the future for the human being and his habitat resides in him precisely in adapting to the existence more as a colony than as an individual, motivated by the solidarity of a swarm intelligence. And it will turn out that in order to save ourselves from the destruction we ourselves wreak on this world, we must somehow transform ourselves into laurel groves, as Daphne, the dryad nymph, did when she was harassed by dog gods. Following these analogies, the cosmic tree in the city also seems to rise from the ethereal space of ideas to gather material goods on its ground, a way of seeing, a way of being metropolis, the mother city. You and me are of the same blood. Darwin, in The Origin of Species, used this archetype in the concept of evolutionary context, even as the basis for common descent. Along with his son Francis, he promulgated the revolutionary thesis, the power of movement in plants, where they show us that plants are intelligent beings. Even today, the conclusion of 1965 Nobel Prize in Physics Richard Feynman, who in The Uncertainty of Knowledge resolves that the substance of the trees comes out of the thin air. People look at a tree and think it comes out of the ground, but if you ask where its substance comes from, the trees come out of thin air. The substance of tree is carbon, which comes from the air. Carbon drives away oxygen and combines with the water that comes from the earth that has absorbed the rain. Life has a mysterious force. The sun species use this archetype in the concept of evolutionary context, even as the basis for common descent. Along with his son Francis, he promulgated the revolutionary thesis, the power of movement in plants, where they show us that plants are intelligent beings. Even today, the conclusion of 1965 Nobel Prize in Physics Richard Feynman, who in The Uncertainty of Knowledge resolves that the substance of the trees comes out of the thin air. People look at a tree and think it comes out of the ground, but if you ask where its substance comes from, the trees come out of thin air. The substance of tree is carbon, which comes from the air. Carbon drives away oxygen and combines with the water that comes from the earth that has absorbed the rain. Life has a mysterious force. The sun shines, and it is that light that hits the oxygen, separates it from the carbon, and throws it back to the air. And by leaving the carbon with the water and so on, the substance of the tree is formed. Nothing new under the sun? In these bitter times, how conclusive the old conjecture of the tree, the large and oldest living being that exists and that represents the totality. What is food? What is air? Energy? Who is an oracle and migrates generous and free with culture? What would be the arete of the forest in the landscape? What is its excellence, that lively and friendly place where you can recognize yourself? The tree is formed from the soul of the world, said Pythagoras. Understand that the tree is at the origin. It is in us, because it is like us. It is in that poetic space where it shadows and the seat of a den, of a room, and beyond, on the ground of the house. Understand that the tree is at the origin. It is in us, because it is like us. It is in that poetic space where its shadow and seat of a den, of a room, and beyond, on the roof of the house, on its staircase, on the bed or the table, even in the word transmitted on paper or in a book. Always the tree as a substance that assembles the same immemorial essence as nature and as life. The era of the Anthropocene, our era, that of the greatest transformation of the environment by human causes, is so in both a negative and positive sense. Hence the challenge, hence our manifesto on the raw material, not only to preserve forests, not only to restore forests, not only by caring for trees and plants, but as a principle, as defense, as regeneration, as present and as future, symbol of authentic freedom in the human epic. Plant, plant, plant.
Hello, welcome back.
Bienvenidos de vuelta.
Ahora
vamos a dar comienzo a la parte final de esta sesión que tiene que ver con la ceremonia de entrega de premios del premio de Rosa Barba y de la Escuela Internacional. Me gustaría darle la bienvenida a los representantes de las instituciones que llevan mucho tiempo prestando su apoyo a la Bienal y especialmente me gustaría darle la bienvenida al decano del Colegio de Arquitectos de Cataluña, el señor Puig, que nos va a dirigir unas palabras. Adelante.
Buenas tardes, bienvenidos en el acto de clausura de la entrega de premios de la Bienal Internacional del Paisaje de Barcelona. Quisiera saludar en primer lugar y agradecer la presencia de compañeros y amigos que representan instituciones y administraciones que prestan apoyo e impulsan y colaboran con la Bienal. Buenas tardes entonces a Josep Tarín, Agustí Serra, Lluís Comerón, Miquel Molins, Ramon Torra, Xavier Matilla, Félix y Jordi Ros. A todos ellos gracias por estar aquí y por contar con nosotros siempre. La edición de este año ha sido un éxito de participación. Nos faltó la presencialidad que recuperamos hoy en este pequeño formato en esta sala, porque realmente se ve un poquito vacía. Intentamos nuevas fórmulas, pop-up que es una manera que tuvimos de ver como juntos desde distintos lugares de otras naciones, cómo pueden estar conectados con la Bienal y además interrelacionarse y verse conjuntamente, ver conjuntamente lo que estamos haciendo estos días.
We need to learn. Obviously, there is a scope for improvement in everything that has to do with the management of the pandemic, and we have thought new ways of conducting these kinds of events amidst the pandemic, but we're grateful. We have reflected on the landscape and its transformations, which needs to act as a tool in order to fight against global warming, climate change, and climate urgency. And this is something that we're witnessing and suffering ourselves on a daily basis. The pandemic has been also a turning point. We have seen the deficiencies and the strengths of our environment, and it has given us the opportunity of thinking that the landscape needs to be a key in the transformation of our environment, and it can facilitate solutions to the challenges ahead, both locally and globally. In previous editions, we shed importance to the good landscape architecture projects that were presented, but these days need to be used in order to raise more awareness about the preponderant role to be played by landscape architecture projects in the reconfiguration planning and reconstruction of our villages and cities. I would like to mention Rosa Barbà, the famous architect who boosted this discipline here in our country, and I would like to highlight the importance of all the projects that have been presented and selected as finalists and the projects for the international schools. And I would like to congratulate the awardees, which we are about to know momentarily. This biennial on landscape architecture is perceived as extremely important by our Association of Architects in Catalonia. Next Monday, we're going to present the Green Center for Architecture, a multi-center facility, and there is also a virtual space that needs to take on the challenges of architecture with the habitat and the citizen in order to seek for solutions and become an active change agent in the quest for research and dissemination, a project with prospects for future in order to foster the discussion regarding architecture, landscape architecture, and urban planning. And I would like to celebrate and share with you the fact that we have achieved the World Capital for Architecture for the year 2026 for Barcelona, and which is going to host the Congress for the International Association of Architects. We are facing challenges, and landscape is going to be, needless to say, a key pivoting factor. Thank you all for looking after, preserving, and celebrating landscape from this biennial. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Asunción. I would like to give the floor now to Jordi Ros, Vice Rector of Infrastructures and Architecture of the Polytechnic University of Catalonia. The floor is yours.
Hola, bona tarda a tothom.
Good evening to you all. First and foremost, I would like to express my satisfaction for being able of representing the university during this long itinerary of 42 years of the degree in landscape architecture here in our nation. And undoubtedly, I would like to thank the organizers of this event for inviting us over in order to be able to present our ideas. It would be impossible to summarize the last 20 years without the presence of the biennial. Without this biennial, it would have been a struggle, or it would have been impossible to be able, throughout these 20 years, at the turning of the century, to bring forward a university degree specifically devoted to landscape architecture or a master's degree devoted to this topic, without the complicity and the engagement of many of the representatives gathered around here. And it would be impossible to explain the first 20 years of this 42-year trajectory in the 80s and 90s without invoking two foundational names. We have the name of Manel Ribes Piera, chair of the university, who at the beginning of the 80s introduced the studies of landscape architecture at our school, and he created the first master's degree, the master's degree for landscape architecture, which is well known, and then the famous name of Rosa Barbà, who 2 years later took on the leadership of that master, rendering it more international and consolidating the landscape architecture studies. I think that these two key characters are essential. And this is projected in the biennial, and from our point of view, one of the most interesting strategic lines was the generation of this double twofold award in true acknowledgement of the shared hands that have researched the official Architecture Association of Catalonia and then the Polytechnic University of Catalonia with the degree of Landscape Architecture Studies. So we decided to give 2 awards for the best built infrastructure represented by the Rosa Barba Award, represented by the Association of Architecture of Catalonia, and then the best academic project, which is the award for the international schools, and maybe Manel Ribes Piera could be awarded. If you allow me some last reflection linked to the title of this conference, let's talk about climate change again, city and nature. I would like to allude to this topic from an anecdote standpoint, and from the standpoint of the pandemic. Many of us will have seen in a puzzled manner how the universities were seized in Bellaterra, our university, and the 3,000 students in Madrid, because 25,000 people gathered around seizing the university campus. And I would like to highlight that the university campuses can have more appealing occupations. I think that the seizing by the students in order to go binge drinking, well, that's something that illustrates that we need to find some new other mechanisms so that our youth comes up with better initiatives other than binge drinking or tailgating around them. And something that we have learned in the private realm is how valuable open air or outdoor spaces are. The people who boasted a balcony, a patio, a terrace have been capable of going through the pandemic lockdowns in a better state of form. And this is pivoting around the research studies regarding outdoor spaces. And this is something that has not arrived the realm of the architecture studies, at least not at the UPC. The Polytechnic University of Catalonia has a wide range of territory footprint. It boasts 9 campuses, and if I must be honest here, I think that the word campus in some sites might be a tad too generous, because rather than talking about campus, we should talk about teaching parks or teaching facilities, if you will, because it encompasses a set of rooms, one next to the other. And I think that landscape here has an important say, because in order for a campus to become a campus, there needs to be a more open relationship between the room and the building and the site and the city, with the roots in the territory. And only through this cohesion, through these axes, are we going to be able to build campuses that we can take pride in and which can generate this social life, which is the know-how that we are proud to boast the university realm. And in the proposal that we have invited you to, well, we're going to hold an academic congress next year that allows us to improve our know-how and on how to build the campuses of the future, and we want to delve deeper into this topic in the near future. And I would like for it to bring hand in hand in a couple of biennials to be able to count between the finalists of the Rosa Barba Award as built structure one construction which is featured in our campus, or in the short term, maybe some of the finalists might execute an academic project that can be translated into a reality in the campus. So I would like to encourage all the people intervening in the Rosa Barba or the International Schools Award to become engaged in the future, and so that they can bring on our reflection and our commitment. Thank you very much.
So, I want to thank very much
Quiero darles las gracias a Jordi Ross por las palabras que nos ha dirigido nuestro vicerrector, que hablaba de la memoria de los pioneros en el paisajismo y en el programa de paisajismo en la Escuela de Arquitectura, el profesor Rivas y la profesora Rosa Barbá, a los que hemos querido prestar una mención especial. Y ahora hemos llegado al momento tan ansiado. Me gustaría presentarles al doctor Kon Jan-Yu, presidente del jurado Rosa Barbá, que nos desvelará quién es el ganador de esta tercera edición. Cuando esté preparado, doctor Kon Jan-Yu. Hola a todos. Buenas tardes. Buenos días o buenas tardes, dependiendo desde dónde nos escuchen. Hemos tenido un gran debate acerca de 11 proyectos excelentísimos listados como finalistas y el jurado, compuesto de 5 de nosotros, incluyendo Julie Pacman, Cristina Castelblanco, Esteban León, James Hart y yo mismo, han dirimido la decisión de que tendremos una mención de honor y un ganador. La mención de honor se otorga a The Real Medellín, en Medellín, Colombia, decidido por Sebastián Monsalve Cauce y J.D. Hoyos y el señor Tebada. Como jurado hemos considerado que la contribución de este proyecto ha cambiado la imagen de la ciudad. Ha pasado de una congestión de tráfico a otro tipo de imagen y ha integrado las áreas de peatones de una manera no sospechada y constituye un modelo que ilustra la capacidad de una ciudad de superar un conflicto, una zona conflictiva, y constituye una inspiración para revitalizar infraestructuras obsoletas con entornos y paisajes urbanos. Démosle la bienvenida y la enhorabuena a este maravilloso proyecto. Y el ganador. La pandemia de los últimos años ha aniquilado. Bueno, ha introducido muchos cambios globales y ha sido un gran influjo en la devastación en Estados Unidos, China, Alemania, por la sequía, también sequía e incendios en África, Australia, que han puesto en peligro la supervivencia de nuestras vidas y eso nos ha hecho repensar el papel que pueden desempeñar el paisaje y sobre todo el rol que pueden desempeñar los parques en nuestras vidas contemporáneas. Considero que todos se han sorprendido por la imagen de miles de personas sentándose viendo actuaciones en los parques con el skyline de Manhattan. Es una ciudad, es un río y es un paisaje importante. Y vemos congregándose todos estos elementos imbricados con mucha habilidad para componer un escenario urbano maravilloso en un entorno maravilloso del siglo XXI, considerado como uno de los espacios más importantes, parecido a un parque central de finales del siglo XIX, como testimonio de su resiliencia a nivel medioambiental, cultural y social. El parque ha influido la conformación del paisaje urbano por doquier y ha conformado un modelo para los ciudadanos que aspiran a mejorar las zonas degradadas y vulnerables. Pero estos paisajes no tenían que ver solo con un paisaje a contemplar. Este paisaje tiene que ver con una naturaleza postindustrial. Hablamos de paisajes creados por el ser humano y los paisajistas pueden ejercer su influjo para mejorar el entorno urbano. Esto tiene que ver cómo un paisaje diseñado puede ejercer su rol como una infraestructura esencialmente verde para sanar la relación entre los seres humanos y los procesos naturales entre la ciudad y el agua. Todos estos elementos se han visto rotos por los errores pasados de la industrialización. Una de las diversas fortalezas que discierne estos proyectos de otros proyectos comparativos reside en el poder que tiene de congregar a las personas y mejorar el sentido de una comunidad inclusiva. Es un entorno de naturaleza diseñada con muchas actividades programadas que lleva los almacenes abandonados de los muelles en decaimiento, tornándoles en un espacio público abundante con visitas anuales de 5 millones. Y es un proyecto estupendo. En cuanto a diseño y tecnología ingenieril, este proyecto genera un referente en el diseño de paisajismo, incluyendo el reciclaje de infraestructuras, la construcción de diversos elementos que se han reintroducido y también que puede absorber las aguas de inundación, que introduce también la absorción de ruidos urbanos, entre otros. Se expande en 85 hectáreas. Este parque ha sido diseñado y construido en los últimos 20 años y el hecho es que este parque ha sobrevivido a la tormenta Sandy y su resiliencia ha demostrado ser exitosa, sostenible y resiliente. Después del debate, el jurado ha decidido que el parque de Brooklyn, diseñado por los asociados Michael, va a recibir el premio de Rosa Barba. Vamos a dar la enhorabuena al ganador, M. Van Valkenburg, por el diseño del parque del puente de Brooklyn. Muchísimas gracias, Dr. Konjenju, presidente del jurado, y muchísimas gracias a los miembros del jurado por toda su generosidad y todo su compromiso con la Bienal para trabajar para otorgar este premio Rosa Barba. Queríamos darle la enhorabuena al ganador Michael Van Valkenburg por su proyecto Parque del Puente de Brooklyn. Y como tenemos a todos los finalistas conectados, queríamos compartir un momento con el galardonado, con el ganador, y le hemos pedido que nos dirija unas palabras. Michael, cuando esté preparado. Adelante. Bueno, muchísimas gracias. La verdad es que me siento de lo más honrado por recibir este premio frente a muchos competidores y grandísimos proyectos que optaban al mismo. Me gustaría lanzar los siguientes agradecimientos. Lidiar con el tema de la elevación del nivel del mar constituye un proyecto ingente con el que todo el mundo está bregando, y lo que hace que sea tan complicado y difícil es que estamos hablando de que de este programa de premios como el que estamos hablando hablan de que las soluciones que aportamos con respecto a la elevación del nivel del mar, pues van a surgir diversos casos individuales donde la naturaleza se va a comportar de una manera oportunista. Y hemos de ser capaces, de la misma manera que la naturaleza se aprovecha de ciertas situaciones, tenemos que hacer nosotros lo mismo, lo propio, para adoptar soluciones que atajen o que sean capaces de gestionar la elevación del nivel del mar. Así que es para mí un gran honor el estar seleccionado conjuntamente con muchos compañeros de profesión a los que respeto y admiro, y me ha encantado ver de cerca sus trabajos. Quería decir también quería hablar sobre el dinero del premio que vamos a utilizar para ayudar. Bueno, vamos a utilizar este dinero del galardón para ayudar a los jóvenes en campo para que tengan la oportunidad de viajar. Nos vamos a centrar en aquellas personas que hasta ahora no han tenido demasiadas oportunidades de viajar en sus vidas, y creo que ese va a ser una consecuencia muy positiva de todo esto. De nuevo, muchísimas gracias a los competidores. Hola Mario, por cierto. Hola Catherine. Vuestro proyecto es maravilloso, como el de Carl. Fantástico veros. Muchísimas gracias a todos. He disfrutado mucho de ver vuestros proyectos y para mí es un honor. Muy bien. En nombre de la Fundación Banc de Sabadell, le vamos a enviar esta litografía de Perico Pastor en recuerdo de este premio otorgado. Y ahora tenemos la posibilidad de conectaros con los finalistas mencionados por el jurado. Nos vamos a conectar con Medellín. Cuando estén preparados, tienen la palabra.
Hola a todos. No entendimos, es nuestro turno. ¿Nos escuchan bien?
Can you hear us? If we understood correctly, it's our turn to speak. Is that correct?
Hola. Bueno,
Hello.
No, queremos,
Well,
estamos muy
yes,
emocionados.
we
Para
are really
nosotros es
thrilled.
realmente pues un honor
It is a true honor
poder,
for us
hacer parte pues como de estos 11 finalistas.
to be
Felicitar a
part
todos los
of this
participantes.
group of 11 finalists. I would
Realmente
like
todos
to
los proyectos
congratulate all
que vemos
participants.
son
All the
proyectos
projects we
que
have
tocan temas muy
seen
importantes para
are
nuestras
dealing with
ciudades,
really
para
key
volvernos a
topics with
reconectar,
our cities. They have to do with
con nuestro
reconnecting
territorio, con nuestras
with our
estructuras
territory,
naturales.
with our
Y
natural
realmente somos pues, muy
structures,
afortunados
and
de
we
poder
feel really
hacer parte
fortunate
como
and humbled to be part
de toda esta,
of
de
this
toda
great
esta
group
estructura, pues, como
of people and
de
this
intervención sobre nuestras ciudades.
structure
Realmente pues queremos agradecer también
of
como a todo nuestro equipo,
urban
a todas las
intervention.
personas que
We
han
would like to
participado
thank
de esto.
all the team
Un proyecto de
members that
estos,
have partaken
realmente
in our
llevamos 8
project
años,
for 8 years, really.
desarrollando,
We have been
digamos que esta
developing
intervención. Entonces,
this
sabemos el
intervention,
esfuerzo muy
so
grande que depende
we
no solo
know
de
the
arquitectos,
great
sino
effort put
de
in,
las ciudades,
not just
de
by
las
architects, but
alcaldías,
also
de
the
equipos
town hall representatives
multidisciplinarios
and
que van buscando
multidisciplinary
también cómo
teams that
ver
are
un
seeking
cambio
for the best way to exert a
sobre nuestras
change
estructuras
upon
y
our
sobre cómo
structures
podemos ir aportando algo
and
también
how
dentro de
we can
para tener
deliver or
ciudades
provide with
más amigables con el
value
medio
so
ambiente
that
y
we can
entender un
have
poquito
more
también hacia
environmentally
dónde vamos
friendly
con el cambio
cities
climático.
and to tackle climate change challenges. And that's it.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much to all the finalists.
Muchísimas
for
gracias a
their
todos los
incredible
finalistas por
and for the jury
su
for their
increíble
amazing
trabajo y
generosity, as we
por
said.
el jurado por
Now,
esta
I want to
inmensa
introduce
generosidad que han
you,
mostrado. Ahora quiero
James
presentarles
Hayter,
a
president of IFLA,
James
a member of
Hayter,
this
presidente
jury,
de
of this,
IFLA y miembro
11th
de
edition,
este
that
jurado
will,
que
give the mentions of the
va a
IFLA.
otorgar las menciones que ha
When you're
aportado
ready,
IFLA.
you
Cuando
have the
esté
floor.
preparado, le cedemos la palabra. Para mí es un placer sumarme a la conclusión de esta Bienal. Soy James Hayter y represento a la IFLA. Y estoy aquí ubicado en el sur de Australia, dirigiéndome a ustedes. la Bienal de este año, bueno, los organizadores han hecho una asociación con IFLA para dar un reconocimiento a un proyecto que es el fruto de la profesión de los paisajistas a nivel global. Pero antes de anunciar el ganador, me gustaría aportar información acerca de IFLA y su misión a nivel global. IFLA a nivel global representa y participa en todos los niveles de la profesión del paisajismo. Sirve como suerte de conexión, entramado de redes, integrando a personas y proyectos y alienta el compartir conocimientos y habilidades entre profesionales y académicos a nivel global. IFLA quiere establecer una política global de alto nivel y servir como abogado, embajador, a través del liderazgo y representar en todos los niveles gubernamental. Y IFLA trabaja en partenariado a nivel estratégico para servir de complemento y ayudar al trabajo de las diversas organizaciones que están involucradas con la profesión del paisajismo y dotar de un marco de investigación también a los paisajistas. Se adoptó hace unos años la decisión de alinear nuestro trabajo y las acciones y tareas de los grupos de trabajo con los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible de las Naciones Unidas. Es una acción global para establecer los valores que puede reportar la profesión del paisajista y el papel que pueden ejercer los paisajistas a nivel global para prestar apoyo a los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible de las Naciones Unidas. Para ilustrarlo, este año hemos emitido una guía de paisajismo vinculados a los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible, los 17 Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible. Y aquí se introducen diversos proyectos reconociendo el papel que desempeñan globalmente los paisajistas en comparación con los 17 Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible. Y trata de identificar algunos de los proyectos y trabajos que han desempeñado los paisajistas en todo el mundo para apoyar los 17 ODS. El Objetivo de Desarrollo Sostenible 1, que es finalizar con la pobreza a nivel mundial, ha estado vinculado con la reducción de costes de vivienda y producir materiales de bajo coste para la construcción. En cada uno de los ODS hemos avalado el trabajo que realizan los paisajistas, avalándolo con proyectos. En este caso tenemos un proyecto en Ruanda y también, también un proyecto en Soweto, en una presa, donde se muestra el trabajo que realizan los paisajistas tratando de atajar la pobreza. Me gustaría anunciar el proyecto que ha sido reconocido con el premio de Rosa Barba y que va a la Reserva Elemental Licandes en Chile, Sudamérica, que se introdujo dentro del programa de premio Rosa Barba. Tenemos a Cecilia Ríos. Y si encuentran ahí el link, verán ahí el enlace dentro del programa Rosa Barba. Y este es un ejemplo que demuestra el rol y la efectividad de los paisajistas que trabajan a nivel local, pero que piensan a nivel global. Es un proyecto pequeño, modesto, pero con elevada significatividad. Está ubicado en Chile, en la costa occidental de Sudamérica, y se ubica a 40 kilómetros de la ciudad más grande de Chile, en Santiago de Chile. El proyecto está ubicado al filo de los Andes, podemos apreciarlo aquí, y vemos que está aquí en la parte del valle. Los autores consideran que un proyecto tiene que ver con cómo frenar la degradación medioambiental y ecosistémica, valorando el planeta y generando las conexiones biológicas con la naturaleza que genera un bienestar. El enfoque de las autoras tiene que ver con apreciar los beneficios que emanan de la interacción entre las personas con el entorno desde una edad temprana, diciendo que la educación de nuestros niños muchas veces se queda confinada entre cuatro paredes y eso genera una falta de conexión entre la naturaleza y la educación. La premisa que ellas apuntan es cómo valorar aquello que no conocemos, con lo cual la metodología de aprender a través de la experiencia de la naturaleza es algo que permite que las personas le otorguen valor a la naturaleza y cambien la estructura de destrucción por una estructura de reconstrucción y consideran que ese es el cimiento de los cimientos y han generado una protección para la reserva de Chile en los Andes y esto está ubicado en la periferia de Santiago de Chile y el proyecto ha sido desarrollado en dos fases. La primera, un plan rector representado por este diagrama y en sus palabras consideran que esto es una construcción sostenible con un presupuesto restringido de infraestructura limitada que permite seguir esta estrategia de intervención mínima para estimular y mejorar el territorio. El plan rector queda descrito por parte de las autoras como que consiste de un circuito que reconoce dos grandes elementos del paisaje, las pendientes y la cuenca del río, el camino del viento y del agua, se encuentran en lugares de encuentro que han llamado plazas. Las autoras han dicho que querían concentrar las actividades de menor impacto en la explanada que llaman el día, con algunos edificios y algunos huertos conectados. Cada uno de los caminos tiene su propio idioma formal adaptado a las condiciones espaciales y materiales presentes en ese lugar. Describen que el proyecto se realiza de manera que se vale de los materiales y recursos humanos locales, contribuyendo así a la economía sostenible. Describen el proyecto las autoras como que comienza por el camino del agua, los invernaderos, los huertos, el teatro en el emplazamiento, y el camino no quiere transformar o dominar el entorno natural, sino que pretende ser una vía de vinculación y conexión con la comunidad para fomentar la educación en la naturaleza. Y eso ha hecho que se acerquen más los niños al entorno de la escuela y también suscita la curiosidad de los profesionales y acerca más la relación entre las personas con la profesión de paisajista, que se considera una suerte de referente. Así que este proyecto modesto ha considerado por parte de estos jueces con esta mención de reconocimiento como un proyecto que encarna todos los valores del paisajista. Todos estos valores son valores defendidos a capa y espada por los profesionales. Se actúa localmente y se piensa globalmente. Y también revelan que con este tipo de educación tenemos la herramienta y contribución más importante que podemos prestar. Se perciben los niños como custodios de nuestro planeta. En último término, el valor que reside aquí es que conecta a las personas con la naturaleza, porque es cierto que es aquí donde podemos encontrar nuestra salud física y mental. Muchísimas gracias. Quiero darle la enhorabuena a los autores de este proyecto, que es algo conmovedor y también ilustra a la perfección todos estos valores imbricados en nuestra profesión y de los que venimos hablando y que reflejan el tema sobre el que versa esta conferencia, que tiene que ver con la protección del medio ambiente, combatir el cambio climático, entre otros.
Sencillamente me gustaría dejarles como un último mensaje que realmente refleja lo que nosotros paisajistas compartimos, y es que los paisajistas deben adoptar un liderazgo en esta época de cambio climático. Debemos defender los valores en los que se funda nuestra profesión. Contamos con las competencias y la creencia que el mundo necesita y depende de nosotros. Y con esto les dejo y felicito a los organizadores de esta conferencia y les doy las gracias también por compartir con nosotros este premio de reconocimiento. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, James.
Thank you very much, James. And I would like to give the floor now to Felix Solaguren, Director of the School of Architecture and Landscape, I could almost say, of Barcelona. So as President of the jury of the landscaping schools would address us a few words.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Voy a leer ahora el resumen del jurado para el proyecto de los estudiantes, de los alumnos. Y voy a leer un texto que hemos preparado. A lo largo de las últimas semanas hemos tenido el placer de revisar algunos proyectos increíbles que son inteligentes y además muy llenos de vida y de significado. La disciplina, nuestra disciplina, está en buenas manos, ya que los autores de estos proyectos nos llevan a partir de una serie de desafíos, pero también de oportunidades. Nos gustaría hacer una mención específica a algunas de las escuelas cuyos trabajos hemos mencionado. Y el ganador para nosotros es el New York City College, profesor Dennis Hoffman Brown, que ha puesto los alumnos en el centro de la presentación de su trabajo. Los alumnos han trabajado en Mumbai, en los Meadows de Jersey, con microbios. En Los Ángeles han también trabajado en medio de ese trabajo. Ese trabajo nos ofrece una perspectiva alternativa y nuevas perspectivas. Los alumnos han hablado y han hecho preguntas, han contestado a todas ellas. Desde el New York City College vemos el trabajo del otro lado del planeta que nos aporta dimensiones teóricas importantes para nosotros. Las preguntas están perfectamente contextualizadas y además los proyectos han ido avanzando hasta escalas finales y los proyectos son desafiantes y nos muestran algo bastante inesperado, ya que tejen aspectos medioambientales de modos muy distintos. Por último, el trabajo del New York City College ha reunido al jurado en su debate sobre el movimiento, la dirección y la ambición del futuro. Especial mención a Sydney porque el trabajo es original y se basa y habla de una diversidad de opinión de todo el jurado. Para muchos de los miembros del jurado, esta obra ha estado al nivel más elevado de innovación pedagógica y ha sido muy admirado. El jurado ha estado muy impresionado por el modo en que los alumnos han consultado con distintos actores en ese recorrido de aprendizaje. El profesor Penny Allen ha hablado muy bien de la necesidad de la complejidad y la distancia del enfoque. Nos encanta el modo en que los alumnos han previsto términos técnicos y han podido desarrollar historias climáticas, representaciones del trabajo que se ha visto maravillosamente presentado ante el jurado. Y otra mención al Politécnico de Milano. La obra del Politécnico de Milano ha hecho que cayera en la lista breve de muchos miembros del jurado. El trabajo se articula preciosamente teniendo en cuenta distintas soluciones que son poéticas más que posaicas, representaciones del jurado, para poder ver cómo las entidades del paisaje pueden colaborar juntas y son oportunas y se centran en el cambio climático abordando distintos temas. A la vez demasiado y demasiado poco. Y especulan la creación de un equilibrio de las dos a lo largo del año. El nivel de comprensión de la estructura y de los sistemas de agua regionales, combinados con dibujos claros, arraigados en propuestas, dotando al trabajo un alto nivel de resolución. Harvard ESD. El trabajo confiado y competente. Además, preciosamente estructurado, creado por los estudiantes, creando nuevas tipologías para el territorio. Los proyectos se centran en significados, en dibujos a pequeña escala, a partir de pequeños paradigmas y pensamientos en acción. Además, abordando los desafíos físicos de aspectos relacionados con el agua. Esto añade problemas sociales y espaciales como los alimentos, integrando también las operaciones en las comunidades. Hannover ha hablado de la emergencia climática fuertemente. Los lugares de los proyectos son ambiciosos, sorprendentes y nos encanta el mundo en que han presentado estas entidades, como las tablas de agua, que han encontrado una nueva presencia a través de la filosofía del diseño. Gracias.
Por la roja. Thank you very much, Felix.
Muchísimas gracias, Félix. Y ahora vamos a dar la palabra a los representantes de las escuelas. Si están listos, por favor, adelante. Muchísimas gracias. Muchísimas gracias. ¿Me oyen bien? Sí, fantástico. Estoy desbordada. En primer lugar, muchísimas gracias a Marina y a todo el equipo de Barcelona por haber organizado este proyecto tan grande, que para mí ha sido una oportunidad única para ver la mayoría de proyectos de programas de paisajismo y arquitectura de todo el mundo y para poder compartir nuestra obra en este contexto. Para mí ha sido un debate importantísimo. Y estoy pensando también en nombre de mis colegas y de todos nuestros alumnos que sin duda ya están celebrando este viernes soleado de la tarde, dispersos por la ciudad. Y una de las últimas cosas que he hecho tras 10 años de directora de programa fue enviar los proyectos para Anne Speidel, ambos guiados por la profesora Catherine Steven Norderson, que es la directora actual del programa, y también he enviado Hanneke Organ, el proyecto de Anna Speidel, perdón, Anna McKee's, su proyecto con el de Catherine, Hanneke Organ y Anna Speidel conmigo, y a la profesora Elizabeth Turani, que ha estado trabajando también en nuestros programas, y de la Escuela de Arquitectura, y el proyecto de Abigail, y también a todos mis alumnos. Es decir, que la continuidad es fantástica. Estoy muy agradecida a todos los estudiantes y a mis colegas que han contribuido a la recepción de este honor, y estoy muy orgullosa de los estudiantes que han mostrado los vídeos y han hablado, porque porque creo que es el aspecto más importante de lo que hacemos, que hablen ellos. Y también quiero agradecer a los miembros del personal potente para llevar a cabo el programa. Las instrucciones equilibran el experto independiente y el discurso que consiste en comprender. Por lo tanto, añadiría en este sentido a todos los alumnos y antiguo profesorado que ha contribuido al proyecto que hemos presentado y a los que hay que felicitar también. Y supongo que indica que somos más que la suma de las partes y quizás esto es algo que queremos desarrollar también en el cambio climático otra vez. Gracias. Muy bien, pues muchísimas gracias a todos ustedes, a las escuelas finalistas por el premio, a los alumnos y a los ganadores también. Y ahora vamos a pasar a continuación. Quisiera presentarles a mi amigo Luis Comerón, que es presidente del Consejo de la Asociación de Arquitectos de España, que anunciará los resultados del Premio Opinión Público Escuelas, Premio de Escuelas y Rosa Barba. Buenas noches.
Buenas tardes.
Good evening.
Bona tarda. El Premi del Públic Rosa Barba és per
Public Awards Rosa Barba is for Original
Transformation of Yangshup
Studio.
Thermal Power Plant
Transformation
Shanghai.
of Thermal Power Plant Shanghai. Y el siguiente,
Premi del Públic per les escoles és per
Premio del Public Schools,
University of
Hong
Science
Kong
and Technology.
University of Science and Technology.
Congratulations.
Felicidades.
A continuación, daré la palabra
I will give the floor
Agustí Serra,
to Agustí Serra,
who
is General Director of Urban Planning of the Generalitat of Catalonia.
Buenas tardes, bona tarda a tothom.
Good afternoon, good evening, everybody.
En primer lloc,
First of
com
all,
lògic, vull felicitar els diversos guanyadors
it's logical I would like to congratulate the different winners of the Rosa Barba Awards and also the Landscape Schools Awards of this International Biennial of Landscape of Barcelona. And I would also like to congratulate all the finalists of this edition. We would have seen in these works different aspects which are worth pointing at. On the one hand, will of dialogue with the environment. We have to say that it's necessary to establish relationships with the different intervention places to adapt to the circumstances and characteristics of the place where we're thinking about intervening and using an expressive vocabulary.
I distingim també una dimensió social de la intervenció paisatgística. Hi ha una lectura dels usos possibles en clau funcional, de les relacions que es poden establir entre persones i del vincle que pot brindar contacte entre aquestes i la natura. I veiem, doncs, una aportació de disciplines diverses que facilita que el projecte guanyi en complexitat i alhora doni una resposta més global a reptes
provides a more global answer to challenges which are
El
diverse.
simposi sobre ciutat, natura i canvi
City,
climàtic,
nature
que s'ha celebrat
and climate change, which
també
has been celebrated
ens
now,
ha servit per
has
posar
helped
sobre la
us
taula
to place on the
algunes
table
de les
some
preocupacions,
of the main worries that we
del
have.
present.
Worries which
Unes
belong to the
preocupacions
present.
que són comunes
Worries which
arreu
are
del
common
planeta.
all over the planet.
Hi ha, sens dubte, un
without
canvi
any doubt,
pel qual
there is a
transitar
change
des de l'actuació en el
which goes
paisatge,
from
des de
acting
l'obra de
on the
transformació de
landscape,
l'espai físic,
transforming the physical
i en aquest
space,
sentit, com va
and
dir
in
ahir
this
en Ricard
sense,
Bofill,
as Ricard Bofill said yesterday when he was invested Doctor Honoris Causa by the Polytechnic University of Catalonia, when it's time to speak about how do we approach the way we intervene, it's about materializing at a very historical moment the relationship between the individual and time and space. Therefore, many of the actions that we can see during this biennial and many of the ones that we will see in the immediate future respond to the practical aspects of these historical moments where climate change is at the center of our attention. And this means being able to work at different scales, taking into account these different perspectives. We are talking about urban design, public space, day-to-day, close one, the one that we find now when we go into the street and when we approach one element or another, and we see we see different ways of decreasing the carbon footprint, increasing the soil permeability, or to become more resilient in front of sudden disruptive natural phenomena. If we widen our perspective from a territorial perspective, we have things to say when it comes to relate landscape and climate change. And sometimes acting can mean preserving the spaces from this urban footprint, and in fact the way to create cities and inhabited spaces that we have been able to maintain for the last decades. After several European instances, people speak about zero consumption of soil and pointing towards a perspective of urban development with the different master plans of sustainable soils that we are developing. They should follow this line. In this case, extinguishing the possibilities of urban growth, design at other times, consumers of soils, and with detrimental landscape effects, which mean a threat for the conditions of the territory, landscape, and in summary, our day-to-day life. And related to this previous concept, and in fact, this is just the consequence, there is this idea of regeneration. We have to promote projects of transformation of those pre-existing ones within the urban and peri-urban framework, and we have to reduce the use of ecological soil to preserve the conditions, the capacity to contribute with water resources, to regenerate food or energy, to create biodiversity, for example, is important. And in this sense, we have to act by recycling, giving new uses, regenerating new opportunities to these spaces, which often have a great potentiality. Although it might seem a slower action and more difficult one from a bureaucratic point of view, the benefits that will give us are much higher. So we realize that there is a parallel path from which each one from our field of action is asking according to these approaches. I think that we have to do even more in this sense. And altogether, there are some common and universal readings now of changes and uncertainties that for sure come from the lessons that we all share. And at the same time, we realize that some proposals of personal actions come up which are adjusted to the particularity of every space. So this is one of the values and the set of actions that we are doing nowadays, and we celebrate in this biennial, and they have to be underlined. And to conclude, thank you very much and congratulations to the organizers, members of the Executive Committee, and the members of the jury of this 11th session of the biennial. It has been a success, and let's look forward to meet again on the next occasion. Thank you very much. So in order to close this act and today's conference, we're going to listen to Josep Tarín Canales, Deputy Delegate of Mobility, Natural Spaces and Prevention of Forest Fires of the Diputación of Barcelona.
Bona tarda, bon vespre.
Good evening.
Primer de tot,
well, first of all,
com ha fet el company que m'ha precedit,
the previous speaker has
d'aquests premis.
Said, I would like to congratulate the award winners, the finalists, and also the participants.
També un reconeixement
I also want to recognize and express my gratitude towards the organizing committee of this 11th biennial for the effort they have made in order to be able to organize this conference, taking into account the difficult circumstances that we are going through for the last year and a half and the pandemic, and also for your tenacious efforts in order to overcome all the difficulties that you have faced in order to organize this biennial. Thank you once again to the sponsors and the different administrations that provide support and collaborate in this biennial, showing that landscape is a key element in the planning and structuring of the territory in order to mitigate the effects of climate change. This year's biennial logo is climate change again, city and nature. And this means that climate change intervenes within the nature of our planet, and cities have to renaturalize themselves. The Diputación of Barcelona has been one of the first entities committed from an institutional perspective with sustainable development, and also with sharing and adopting the Agenda 2030 objectives of the UN, which are the different objectives of our own institution. The objective of promoting the sustainability of ecosystem, to stop the loss of biodiversity, and also to promote green spaces. It's a priority of our institution. From the Diputación of Barcelona, together with the collaboration of more than 100 municipalities, because in the local sphere is our premise, we are managing 11 protected natural spaces, more than 100,000 hectares, within the province of Barcelona. And the main objective of this action is to preserve nature, to preserve landscape, and to preserve biodiversity, to also preserve people and the economic activity which is deeply rooted within these territories. And this is why the way we understand our natural environment as an important value
of our territory and also an important value of our society, which contributes to the territorial balance and also the sustainable economic and social development. Landscape, therefore, is an important element contributing with a number of intangible benefits, intangible maybe, but which also contribute with benefits for the health of people from a physical and mental point of view. And this is something that we have clearly seen during the pandemic, once the lockdown ended, when people and citizens have been able to have invaded, if you allow me the expression, all the natural spaces in order to be able to enjoy the freedom of being in an open space, to enjoy a landscape and to enjoy open spaces, which means that we have highlighted the importance of the landscape, of the natural environment and rural environment. And this is our premise as Diputación of Barcelona, to be able to work in order for this to be a fact and in order for people and people who inhabit these territories are able to continue working, living and developing what other generations have done before to preserve the landscape of where they live. And this is a question that has to be taken into account. This communion and this relationship, bidirectional relationship between the urban world and rural world. They need each other and they reinforce each other. And to conclude, I would like to highlight the importance of the collaboration of the Diputación of Barcelona with the biennial collaboration, which allows us to be in touch with the best experts, people of recognized prestige, and also to learn from their experiences and proposals in order to be able to apply them to this network of natural parks that we are managing. Thank you very much.
Okay. So, finally, we arrived to the end.
Por último,
this is a special
llegamos
moment
al
for all
final.
of us,
Este es
for
un
all the
momento especial
2,500
para
registered
todos.
registration we have had,
Los
to all the professionals that
2.900
have sent
personas
their work
registradas,
to
para
the
todos los
Biennal,
profesionales que
to
han
all the
repetido
schools that have
sus
worked
trabajos, sus
so
proyectos
much
a la Bienal, para
to
todas aquellas
make us
escuelas que han
enjoy
trabajado arduamente
their
para
work,
hacer que
and
pudiésemos
to all the
disfrutar de
people
su
that
trabajo,
has helped
y para
us
todos aquellos que nos
to
han
do
venido
things.
ayudando a
So,
acometer
Marina,
todos esos
please,
proyectos.
go
Marina,
ahead.
adelante, por favor.
So just final words.
Unas palabras finales para agradecerle la labor a las instituciones organizadoras, el Colegio de Arquitectos de Cataluña, todas las instituciones que nos han apoyado, la Diputació de Barcelona, la Generalitat de Catalunya, l'Àrea Metropolitana de Catalunya, l'Ayuntamiento de Barcelona, la Fundación del Banc Sabadell y todos los socios, compañeros, colegas que nos están ayudando a lanzar esta iniciativa tan interesante en todo el mundo. Creo que sin la contribución de nuestro jurado, ponentes, finalistas, no seríamos capaces de lanzar esta perspectiva, este contenido tan amplio que hemos podido arrojar hasta hoy. Y nos sentimos muy satisfechos de haber podido navegar esta edición, que ha sido un poco a caballo entre el formato online y presencial, pero que nos ha dotado de una pista apenas de lo que está cociéndose hoy en el mundo del paisajismo en todo el mundo. Así que, well, allow us to bid you farewell with a feeling that this time it has been a bit difficult or perhaps a bit easy. We don't know exactly, but it has been, which is the most important thing. We have carried it out. All of you are kindly invited to celebrate with us at the bar of this magnificent music palace, Palau de la Música, so that we can toast to yet another one biennial. Thank you all.